Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So, welcome to our webinar on Philippine history. So, I would just like to make few reminders for everyone who are here in Zoom that please mute yourselves whenever you are here because we need to avoid the distraction for the discussion of our speakers later part. And we would like also to greet our viewers in the YouTube channel of wiserpinoy.tv. Everyone. So welcome to our webinar on history. So I would just like to make a few reminders for everyone who are here so that please yourselves whenever or pause. Avoid instruction for the discussion of our speakers. We'd like also to thank our viewers, the YouTube channel of Wiser. Okay, sorry for that interruption. And now I would like to request everyone to put ourselves in the holy presence of God as I will show you the prayer as well as national anthem via multi.
Continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth for the greater glory of you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiging telas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisi.
Okay, so I would like to ask everyone. Okay, so I would like to greet everyone a pleasant afternoon and thank you very much for your presence, for gracing our activity for this afternoon pertaining to the webinar on the Philippine history. So I know that we've been seeing most of the time virtually, but this is the perfect moment for us to recalibrate ourselves and reinvent so that we will be able to appreciate more and understand our history. So for this afternoon, what we are expecting as an output for this event are the following. First, we will be dealing and understanding with the pre-Hispanic period. So we will try to check what are the culture of our forefathers before, prior to the colonization of the Spaniards. And after we establish that, we will also be dealing with how our forefathers or the early Filipinos were discriminated and exploited by the Spaniards during the Spanish era. And of course, we will also be appreciating the things that the Spaniards had brought to the Philippines. And after we explored the Spanish era, we will be dealing also with the American regime. We will try to appreciate also, and of course, look back what are the negative things that the American people had brought to the Filipinos, as well as what are the legacies that they have impacted to us that until now we are enjoying and we are thankful with. And after that, I will be discussing to you the Japanese era, the short but very momentous colonization of Japanese in the Philippines. And of course, finally, someone from us, one of the historians also will be discussing the legacies of the different presidents in the Philippines from the First Republic up to the present Republic. So I think everyone is now very excited to meet our first speaker. Our first speaker, I already made him a co-host. Sir Glary, are you here with us? Give me a signal so I could introduce you to everyone.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Perfect. Okay, so since our speaker for this afternoon, our first speaker for this afternoon is already ready, now let us have an introduction of him. Our first speaker is a graduate of Mindanao State University Iligan Institute of Technology with a degree Bachelor of Arts in History. Currently, he is finishing his Master of Arts in History at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. A very active, a very young, and very promising professor of Central Mindanao University. Help me welcome Mr. Glary Jun Vedra. A round of applause, please.
Okay, good morning. Let me share my screen first. Okay. Nakikita niyo ba yung presentation ko? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, isang mapagpalaya at makasaysayang umaga o hapon sa lahat. So, ang paksang ibinigay sa akin, no, ni Attorney James Violon ay ang Pilipinas bago ang ikalabing-anim na siglo. So bago natin sisimulan ang ating talakayan sa Pilipinas, no, bago dumating ang mga Espanyol, bago dumating ang mga Amerikano, paano nagkaroon ng mga Hapon sa Pilipinas, ay tatalakayin muna natin kung ano ang nangyari sa bansa bago, no, dumating ang mga colonizers. So ito yung Pilipinas ng mga dinatnan din ni Magellan in 1521. So bakit ginagamit ang termino pre-16th century? bilang pantukoy sa mga nangyari sa bansa bago ang pagdating ni Magellan. Maraming nagsasabi na tawagin daw itong pre-colonial or prehistory, pero upang magkaroon ng mas malinaw na paghihiwalay sa era bago si Magellan ay gagamitin natin ang pre-16th century Philippine society. Okay. So sa talakayan ko, fo-focus ako sa limang mahalagang aspeto ng buhay sa sinaunang bayan. So, pag sinasabi kong sinaunang bayan, pag sinasabi kong sinaunang bayan, ito yung pre-16th century Philippine society. So tatalakayin ko ng glimpses of pre-16th century Philippine society, the politics, the economy, the religion, the social structure, and the education. So, bago natin sisimulan ng ating talakayan sa sinaunang bayan, titignan muna natin kung sasalamin muna natin kung ano ang pagkataong Pilipino. So, sa pamamagitan ng pagsasalamin sa pagkataong Pilipino, ay makikita natin kung anong pinagdaanan niya sa sinaunang bayan at kung paano niya hinarap ang mga hamon ng Espanyol at Amerikano at ng Hapon. So, sasaklaw ang pagkataong Pilipino sa dalawang mahalagang aspeto. Ang una, ang tao bilang banga, no? Na ayon kay Cobar, na may loob, may labas at lalim. So pag sinasabi nating ang pagkataong Pilipino ay may loob, labas, lalim, ito yung paghihimay kung anong klaseng pagkatao ang Pilipino. So, hindi lang ito sumasalamin sa pagkataong Pilipino sa sinaunang bayan, ngunit pag sinasabi nating loob, labas, lalim ng pagkataong Pilipino, sinasaklaw niya ang kabuuang pagkatao ng Pilipino. Kahit sa panahon na ng Espanyol, kahit sa panahon na ng Amerikano, andito pa rin yung kanyang pagkatao na may loob, may labas at lalim. So pag sinasabi nating loob, labas, lalim, na para siyang may banga. Ang kanyang loob, ang kaibuturan ng kanyang puso, ang kanyang pagkatao, ang kanyang pagka-Pilipino. So pag sinasabi nating ang Pilipino ay masipag, ang Pilipino ay maunawain, no? Mapagkalinga, ito yung kanyang loob, ang sumasaklaw sa kanyang pagkatao. Pero ang kanyang pakikipag-ugnay sa labas at ang pakikitungo niya, no, sa mga hamong panlabas, ito ang kanyang panlabas na pagkatao. At ang pangatlong pagkataong Pilipino, sumasaklaw sa isang pangatlong konsepto, ito yung lalim. Dito nakaugat ang kanyang pamana, no? Kaya napaka-strong ang kultura natin ng pagsisinop, no? Ang pag-aalaga sa pinamana ng ating mga ninuno dahil parte ito ng ating pagkatao, ang lalim natin. So, hindi lang ito sa sinaunang bayan, bagkus damang-dama pa rin natin sa kasalukuyan na ang pagkataong Pilipino ay hindi pa rin humahiwalay sa pagbibigay halimbawa ni Cobar na may loob, may labas at lalim. Kaugnay ng pagkataong Pilipino na may loob, may labas, at lalim, meron ding sinasabi si Dr. Villana, ang pagtungo ng Pilipino sa kasaysayan, no, ng bansa, ang paglakbay ng Pilipino sa kasaysayan ay matagal na pagkakalinga, no, at pagkip, no, sa buhay, ginhawa at dangal. Pag sa sinabi nating buhay, ginhawa at dangal, no, sa pagkataong Pilipino, mahalaga sa atin ang buhay. Kaya meron tayong sinasabang naghahanap buhay. Ito yung pag nag-work ka, ikaw ay naghahanap ng buhay. Pinapaniwalaan din natin na pag namatay ang tao, sumasakabilang buhay siya. Meaning hindi nawawala sa pagkataong Pilipino ang buhay. Napaka-importante sa kanya ang buhay. Kailangan niya ang buhay dahil magtutuloy ang buhay upang magkaroon ng ginhawa. So, ang kaginhawaan sa kulturang Pilipino, no, ay hindi lamang makalaya, no, hindi lamang ikaw ay labas sa dominasyon ng panlabas, kung hindi ang ginhawa sa pagkataong Pilipino ay kaginhawaan ng buhay. So, hindi lamang mabuhay, dapat guminhawa din ang buhay. Kaya napakahalaga sa atin ang maghanap buhay upang magkaroon ng maginhawang buhay. At ang panghuli ay ito yung laging pinapangalagaan ng Pilipino, ang kanyang dangal, no? Ang kanyang pagharap sa mga hamon ay ang kanyang pagpapatuloy ng buhay, ginhawa at dangal. So mapapansin nyo sa talakayan mamaya patungkol sa Espanyol, patungkol sa pananakop ng mga Amerikano at ng mga Hapon, lutang na lutang ang konsepto ng buhay, ginhawa at dangal na ang pakikitungo ng Pilipino sa mga nangyari sa bansa ay ang kanyang pag-aalaga na magkaroon ng buhay, magkaroon ng ginhawa at magkaroon ng dangal. So ito yung sasaklawin ng kasi pambunga dito yung tinatalakay ko. So dapat makita natin ang mga konseptong ito kahit hindi man lang klaro, ngunit sa pakikitungo ng Pilipino sa mga nangyari sa kasaysayan ay lutang na may pagpapahalaga talaga ang Pilipino sa buhay, ginhawa at dangal gamit ang kanyang pagkatao na may loob, labas at saka lalim. So magpapatuloy tayo sa ating talakayan. So ano ang Pilipino sa sinaunang bayan? So maraming teoryang lumalabas kung ano ang Pilipino sa sinaunang bayan. May raming theory of migration, no? Kung paano nakarating ang mga Pilipino sa Pilipinas. So isa mga tinitignan kong aspeto or tinitignan kong teorya is yung Austronesian Migration Theory na ang ginamit niyang mga batis pang kasaysayan upang suportahan ang migration theory is yung ethno-linguistic group at language ang ginamit niyang pagtalakay kung ano ang koneksyon ng mga Pilipino sa iba't ibang Austronesian. So at ano ang kultura ng Austronesian? No, ang Austronesian in a bigger picture, it is the manlalayag or the voyagers. Okay, so kung titignan natin ang pelikulang pelikulang Moana,
Sir Larry, na-mute po kayo.
okay, nawala kasi itong internet. Sorry. Okay. Are you hearing me? Am I audible na?
Yes po.
Okay. So, ang teorya ito ay sumusuporta sa pagtitingin ng pagkapapareho ng mga lengguwahe ng mga Austronesiano. So kung pupunta tayo sa Indonesia, punta tayo sa Malaysia, makikita natin ang may pagkakapareho yung lengguwahe natin. So sumusuporta ito sa teorya ng Austronesian Migration Theory. So balikan ko lang yung pelikulang ng Disney ng Moana. Doon natin masasalamin kung anong kultura meron tayo sa sinaunang bayan na lagi tayong naglalayag. So ang punto ng Austronesian migration ay sumusuporta sa kasalukuyan nating pananaw, no? At sa kasalukuyan nating estado, no? Na wala tayong nakakitaan sa Pilipinas ng mga megalithic structure. Pag sinasabi nating megalithic structure, ito yung mga structure na malalaki, no? Like the Great Wall of China, no? Mga ganun, mga pyramids of Giza. Wala tayo sa Pilipinas dyan dahil nakaugat sa atin ang ating pagiging manlalayag. So pag ikaw ay isang manlalayag, hindi ka laging nakaperme sa iyong tinitirhan. Bagkos ikaw ay laging naglalayag, no? So, ang buhay sa sinuunang bayan ay hindi permanenteng nakatira ka lamang sa isang lupain. Bagkos ikaw ay temporal, no? Hindi kaya meron tayong konsepto ng bayanihan na pag dinidepict siya ay binubuhat yung bahay para ilipat, no, sa ibang pwesto. So ang ganong konsepto kung bakit meron tayong bahay kubo kasi nga temporal ang buhay sa sinaunang bayan. Kasi pag hindi na fertile yung land, they leave and they transfer to another. So pagdating ng mga Espanyol at ng mga Amerikano, naging perme ang mga Pilipino. So humiwalay sila sa sinaunang kaugalian ng pagiging pag-migrate, no, at ng panglalayag. Kaya ngunit, no, ito yung mga sinasabi na mga ibang scholars na kahit pilit pinapayakap sa atin ng mga kanluraning paniniwala, kanilang paniniwala, pumipiglas pa rin sa kaugalian, pumipiglas pa rin sa mga alaala natin ang ating pag-Austronesiano. Kaya hanggang ngayon makikakitaan natin ito ng ebidensya na ang mga Pilipino ay makikita natin sa iba't ibang lugar sa mundo. Kasi nga nakaugat sa ating pagka-Pilipino, ang ating pag-Austronesiano na tayo ay manglalaya. So the Proto-Austronesian speakers cross the Strait of China from Formosa, which is now Taiwan. No, they reached the Batanes Island. This is according to Bellwood in 1998. So these are one of the many theories of the peopling of the Philippines. But if you look to these theories, isa lang yung makakitaan natin ng ebidensya at ang connection ng iba't ibang mga theories. Ito yung ang pagka-Austronesiano natin, yung pagiging manlalayag. So nakakabit yun sa ating pagka-Pilipino. Okay. So, punta tayo sa the type of government in the pre-16th century Philippine society. So the type of government in the Philippine pre-16th century society is the barangay system, no? Na napakalakas, napakatanyag, no? Napaka-organisado. Kaso nga lang, pag sinasabi nating barangay, wala pa rin kasi tayo ditong konsepto ng nation, yung bansa. No, wala pa tayong ganung konsepto na tayo kaisa natin yung ibang mga isla sa Pilipinas. Bagkus, konektado tayo economically through trading, konektado tayo sa iba't ibang mga bayan-bayan sa Pilipinas. Ngunit wala pa tayong konsepto na kaisa ko siya, no? Kasi naunang bayan, ang konsepto ng barangay is you protect your barangay. Kaya kung mapapansin niyo sa pagdating ng mga Espanyol, bakit nagkakalaban yung mga Pilipino at iba't ibang mga kalaban ng mga Cebuano o mga Buholanon, yung mga Moro or mga Maranao ng Northern Mindanao. Bakit? Kasi nga wala tayong konsepto ng kaisa. Ang ating kalakalan, sinaunang bayan, ay yung pagprotekta sa ating barangay na nanggagaling sa sinaunang konsepto natin ng balangay. Ang paggamit ng balangay ng sinaunang bayan na sumasalamin sa ating pagiging manlalayag. This is the earliest form of government that we have in the Philippines. It is independent, no? Meron siyang organisadong social structure, may pinuno, merong pakikilakal, no? Sa iba't ibang parte ng iba't ibang barangay din. Then, the barangay is composed of 30 to 100 families, situated, of course, along the riverbank kasi nga ang tubig ay buhay. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo, lahat ng mga ethno-linguistic groups sa Pilipinas, ang kanilang pangalan ay nagsisimula sa mga riverbanks. Kasi ang konsepto natin ng Ilaya, Ilawod ay ganoon na rin, no? Na ang river ay pinangkukunan natin ng direksyon. Hindi sa sinaunang bayan hindi natin tinitignan ng araw bilang pag-point ng direksyon kung saan asa mo gawas ang araw, yun yung norte natin. Hindi ganon. Kasi naunang bayan, ang ating point of direction is the river. So kung pag andun ka sa upstream, ang tawag sa iyo Ilaya. Pag andun ka sa baba, Ilawod. So ganun ka-importante ang mga ilog sa sinaunang bayan. Kaya ang pagpapangalan sa mga sa mga Pilipino, mga ethno-linguistic groups ay nakabatay rin sa river. Ito yung Matigsalog galing sa Salog River. Na Tiguahanon is getting from the Tigua River, no? So ganun yung pagbibigay pangalan. Meron tayong mga Subano na came from the river. So ganun yung pagbibigay pangalan. Nakabatay kasi nga ang sinaunang konsepto ng gobyerno ay nakabatay rin sa paglalayag at situated along the river banks. And the economy in the 16th century Philippine society is the barter system. So pag sinasabi nating barter system, wala tang currency, no? Walang pera. So ang konsepto pa rin ng Ilaya, Ilawod ay masasalamin pa rin natin sa barter system na kung saan kung ikaw ay taga-Ilaya or taga-Bundok, ang iyong mga kalakal, no, na surplus products mo dun sa bukid, no, kamote, saging, na kailangan din ng mga taga-baba, ay binababa mo sa Ilawod, no? Pumunta ka sa mga baybayin upang ikalakal mo yung mga kalakal mo galing sa bundok. At ganoon din, no? Yung mga surplus products ng mga taga-baba ay kinakalakal din. It is an exchange of mga needs ng taga-baba sa mga needs ng taga-bundok. So ganun ang konsepto ng barter system. If I'm not mistaken, the barter system still exists today in Zamboanga City. Mayroon pa ring barter system doon, no? Dahil nga politically put in economic history of the Mindanao, Zamboanga is very important in the political economy of Mindanao. So ganun na lang din yung paglitaw ng barter system doon. So the barter system is hindi lang between two barangays. No, the barter system is very vast, no? At ganun malawak din ang kanyang saklaw. Pumupunta sa Borneo, sa Malaya, sa Thailand, Cambodia, Sumatra, India. Kaya meron tayong mga connections ng Butuan to China, meron mga taga Zamboanga na may connection sa China because also of slave trade. So ganun kalakas ang sinaunang bayan patungkol sa ekonomiya, no? Pakikilakal na hindi kailangan ng pera, kung ano lang kailangan mo, i-exchange mo sa pangangailangan ng iba. So the concept of the barter system ay sumasaklaw din at nagpapakita rin kung gaano ka establish ang barangay system in terms of economy. Okay. So the spiritual beliefs of the Philippine pre-16th century Philippine society is animism, no? Ito yung pag-praise, no? Pag-worship pala sa mga moon, sa stars, sa caves, sa mountains, sa rivers, sa plants and trees. Pero tanong bakit, no? Kasi nga paniniwala ng mga sinuunang Pilipino na pag sumakabilang buhay, no? Ito naman yung paghahanap ng buhay, yung pagpapahalaga sa buhay, hindi sila naniniwala na nawawala lamang ang espiritu. So para sa kanila ang pag sumakabilang buhay ang yumao ay napupunta siya sa mga caves, napupunta siya sa mga rivers, kaya pag sumasapit na ang Nobyembre, pag dumadala or pag anniversary, no, ng yumao, pag may nakita tayong butterfly at kung anumang no, mga paru-paro, no, na pumunta sa bahay, ito yung sinasabi natin, yung lolo mo yan, no, dinadalaw tayo, no, kaya hindi natin ginagalaw. Kasi nga, ang paniniwala ng sinaunang bayan ay tumatawid hanggang sa kasalukuyan. Kahit pilit na pinapayakap sa atin ng mga Amerikano at ng mga Espanyol ang Kristyanismo, pumipiglas pa rin ang ating paniniwala at ang ating sinaunang paniniwala. Kaya makikita natin na sa sinaunang bayan, andun, no, ang konsepto natin ng pagrespeto sa environment. Kasi nga, ang nakapalibot sa atin ay pinapaniwalaang pinamamahayan ng mga yumao nating mga ancestors. So, it is the original belief of the Filipinos. Kaso nung dumating yung mga Espanyol, dahil pilit nilang pinapayakap sa atin ang Katolisismo, pilit nila, no, pinapawala sa atin ang animismo, pero nag-create ang mga Pilipino ng bagong paniniwala, which is the folk Catholicism, na humahalo ang animismo, sinaunang paniniwala, at ang Katolisismo. So nakabuo ang Pilipino ng bagong konsepto ng paniniwala. So ito yung kaso nung dumating mga Espanyol, pilit din nilang sinasabi na ito ay paganong paniniwala, kaya may iba na hindi na naniniwala sa mga animismo. Pero kung pumupunta ka sa mga ethno-linguistic groups, lalo na dito sa Bukidnon, andun pa rin yung pagrespeto nila sa mga anito, andun pa rin yung mga apo, no, dinadasalan pa rin, ginagawan pa rin ng ritual. So sa madaling sabi, hindi nawala ang animismo. Nagpapatuloy ang paghahanap ng buhay. Ito yung pangalaga nila ng buhay na kahit yumao na yung ninuno, kaya nga mismo meron tayong mga nuno sa punso kasi nga galing yun sa word na ninuno na pinaniwalaan natin dun pumunta ang nuno. So ganun yun ang konsepto natin ng spiritual beliefs in the pre-16th century Philippine society. Okay, the social structure sa Pilipinas, meron tayong no? We have the Maharlika, the Timawa, and the Alipin. Ngunit ang pagiging alipin sa sinaunang bayan ay hindi ang alipin na konsepto ng kanluranin, no? Pag sinabi nating alipin, hindi ka nanatiling alipin. Dahil nga temporal ang buhay, temporal din ang pagiging alipin. Temporary din ang pagiging alipin pala. So, ang pagiging alipin mo ay hindi naging alipin habang buhay, may pagtitimawa. So, Hindi porket alipin ka ngayon, mamamatay kang alipin. Kasi mahalaga ang ating pagpapahalaga, no? Malakas ang ating pagpapahalaga sa buhay. Hindi lang buhay natin, kundi buhay rin ng ating kasamahan sa bahay. So, ang sinaunang social structure ay mas organisado, mas humane siya compare sa sa Western concept of alipin na sa kanila pag you are a slave, you'll always be a slave. You will die of a slave, even mga anak mo ay magiging slave din. Sa atin, no, pag nabayaran mo na yung utang mo, ang kabayaran mo yung pagiging alipin, hindi ka na magiging alipin. Pwede ka na maging tiwawa. Pwedeng pakasalan ng maharlika ang isang alipin o ang timawa ang isang alipin. So, walang distinction in terms of the functions, no? It's just that the what's this? The being alipin in the sinaunang bayan is very humane siya. Kasi nga kahit ngayon lumulutang sa ating kultura ng tawag natin sa maid natin sa bahay is kasambahay, or kung sa Bisaya pa we have katabang. So hindi sila alipin. Hindi sila slave, kundi katabang, meaning katulong lamang. Kasambahay, meaning kasama sa bahay. We don't see them as slaves in the Filipino society. So kahit inalipin tayo ng mga Espanyol, kahit inalipin tayo ng mga Amerikano, hindi natin niyakap ang kultura nila ng pag-aalipin ng ating kapilipino, no? Or ating kababayan, kabarangay. Ngunit ang pumipiglas, no, at ating pinapahiwating hanggang sa kasalukuyan na ang mga taong ito ay kasama sa bahay, katulong lamang, hindi alipin. Okay? So in the pre-16th century Philippine society, we have the oldest form of writing, which is the baybayin, na hindi siya ano tawag nila iba dito. So the pre-16th century Philippine society is the baybayin. It's a syllabary consisted of 17 symbols. Kasi nga ang lingwahe natin ay syllabic siya. Hindi siya letter na A, B, C, D. Kaya ang ating pagbaybay sa ang alpabeto ay abakada. Kasi nga syllabary consisted of 17 symbols yung sinauna nating lingwahe or the form of writing. So the Laguna copper plate inscription that we have on the screen is ano siya in evidence of the early contact of the Austronesians and Southeast Asian neighbors. So ito yung ano siya an evidence na mayroon tayong malaking connection sa iba't ibang mga Austronesiano in Southeast Asia in the pre-16th century Philippine society. Okay. And the form of art, of course, ang dami nating form of art in the Philippine pre-16th century society, isa dito yung tattooing, na ang simbolismo nito ng tattooing is ang katapangan ng isang datu, no? Ang kanyang pakikipag-ugnay at kanyang mga napatay, no? Kasi kung marami kang tattoo, marami ka ring napatay. The form of art is not the form of art in the pre-16th century Philippine society is not about an entertainment. No, it is an embodiment of life, an interpretation and celebration of life. The dances before is not for entertainment purposes, or the singing before is not a form of performances. They are performed during rituals, important celebrations, among others. One of these was tattooing that have been practiced by Filipinos in the pre-16th century Philippine society. Kaya matatapang kasi ang mataong may tattoo sa sinaunang Pilipino. Kaya ginamit ng mga Espanyol ang Presidios de Pintados upang labanan ang mga ngayong Moro in the long run. Kaya nga nakitaan ng mga Espanyol ang katapangan ng mga Espanyol ng mga pintados, yung mga tattooed Filipinos in the pre-16th century. Okay? And that's the end of my presentation on the pre-16th Philippine society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir June. A lot of things that we have to learn from the past, particularly prior to the colonization, were discussed properly. So maraming salamat. Tunay na pinatunayan mo sa amin ang iyong galing sa pagka-istoryador ng ating bansa. So, sir, thank you. I think there are questions, I suppose. I think the discussion was very good and properly laid down because I cannot see any question. Our next speaker supposedly will discuss on the pre-Hispanic period. Unfortunately, he has an errand, but he promised to be here. But so that we cannot waste our time, I would like to proceed with our next speaker on the American colonization. She is a graduate of AB History at Mindanao State University as cum laude and a graduate of Master of Arts in History at Xavier University in Ateneo de Cagayan University in Cagayan de Oro City. Also a very ingenious and very promising faculty member of Central Mindanao University in the Department of Social Sciences. Please help me welcome Ms. Leia Lay Bungas. Lay, please take over. Thank you. Lay, we cannot hear you, Lay.
Hello? Hello? Saan? Hello? Wala, di ko alam.
Yes, Lay, we can hear you now, Lay.
Okay. Okay. Okay, sorry for that. Madong na ko, Sir James. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
So, Sir Glary, good afternoon, everyone. Sir Glary will be presenting on behalf of Sir Glary. Okay. So, supposedly, we're supposed to have the Spanish colonization period first so that we can understand more how the Americans came here. But
Lay,
Since
sorry to interrupt, but you're quite static. Isa ra mo ni Glary? Kaglari na lang gulong nga mic ang gamita, Lay, kay para dili kayo static, medyo putol-putol manggod. Thank you. Is Professor Jay already here? Jay, nandito ka na ba, Jay? Wait for a while because Miss Leia Bungas is experiencing a technical problem. Wait for a while. Hello, Jay. Good afternoon. Jay? I think he's still setting up. So before and while waiting for our next speaker, good thing that our speaker for the Hispanic period is already here, so we could have a continuous and chronological order of the presentation of the topic. So I hope no nga naatin natunan sa discussion earlier ni Sir Glary about the pre-colonial period. So technically, daghan taog na discover that about slavery, the concept of slavery, asa na nagikan nga notion, and we have to clear it up, no nga during the pre-colonial period, wala ga exist ang concept of slavery, not until the Europeans had introduced it to us nga naay slavery. So yes, finally, Professor Jerome Del Santos is already here. Jay, are we good?
Madunggan na ba ko, Sir
Yes,
Jay?
yes, you're audible now.
Okay.
But before that, Jay, allow me to introduce you to our students here who are here in Zoom and as well as in YouTube. So we are currently live at the Wiser Pinoy TV channel in our YouTube channel. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker who will be speaking about the Spanish colonization is a graduate of AB History at Mindanao State University as cum laude. Also, he finished his Master in History Institute, and currently he is a professor in the same institute in Mindanao State University Iligan Institute of Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker, Mr. Jerome de los Santos. A virtual round of applause, please.
Thank you, Sir James, no, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Maayong hapon sa tanan. Sige daw, be. Any response sa chat box lang, no, para makitaan po na kung anaapa mo or naminaw, no, kay hapon na ba kayong dako. Daw, asa mga participants ani okay na ra, no, nananakoy nakitaan ng mga emoji, no, o messages, no, to the chat box. So first, ako sa ikuan ha, i-set up, i-share sa nako akong screen ha. A while. How about this one, Sir James? Visible na ba ko ang ano?
Yes, very vivid, sir.
Okay, sige, thank you. Again ha, maayong hapon sa tanan, especially to the students of Sir James. Before proceeding to my lecture, first I would like to thank, no, Sir James Giolon for this opportunity, for this invitation, no, to share my knowledge on the Hispanic period, no, in our Philippine history. And I was actually surprised knowing that other resource speakers of this webinar are my good friends back then, no, during our IIT days. So I am also sending my warmest greetings to Sir Glary, nga earlier nag-present, nag-discuss about the pre-colonial, Ma'am Leia and Sir Marlon, no? Hopefully na nasa diri sa Zoom. So anyway, the topic that was actually given to me by Sir James was all about the Spanish period. Considering that this topic is so broad and comprehensive, so I decided that the emphasis of this lecture will be more on the foundation of Spanish colonialism. Thus, this lecture pertains to review and discuss the political government that was established by the Spanish in our country, in the Philippines, the socio-economic activities, and more of the colonial policies in general. So I repeat, the emphasis will be on the foundation of Spanish colonialism. Though the specific is already, though the topic is already specific, pero still very comprehensive yapon na siya, very comprehensive. That is why, in case na ako'y wala na include or na discuss, and should you have queries on my discussion, so later feel free to ask questions na lang ha. So are you all ready? Ready na bang tanan maminaw sa atong discussion and lecture on the foundation of Spanish colonialism? For sure, ready na, Okay, so let's start. Now, for us to have a better comprehension on the foundation of Spanish colonialism, I think it is imperative for us to discuss first the so-called context. Dapat ato sang i-discuss or sabton sa nato yun ang motives of Spanish colonialism. So with this, I would like to ask our students, our participants, you can actually use the chat box. Feel free to share your ideas. So my question is, what do you think led to the arrival of the Spaniards to Asia in general, or Philippines to be specific? Do you have any idea? Again, before we proceed to the foundation, we need to discuss first the motives. How come niabot man, sabi siya, how come niabot ang mga Spaniards sa Asia in general, or later on to the Philippines to be specific? Do you have any idea? What do you think led to the arrival to the Philippines? Okay, let's see. Nabi nag-comment dira, the introduction of Christianism, to find spices, spread of Catholic religion. Okay, very good, keep writing. Okay? Para interactive po nato ang discussion, Maluku Island, sir. To conquer us, geographic exploration, expedition, voyages all over the world, Christianity, Christian missionary, and looking for spices. So ang common kay nga answer diri has something to do with religion, right? Religion and spices. Okay, anyway, so yeah, you are actually right, Spices, or in general, we call that one as Oriental products. Okay? So, sige, so data mag-start sa ato ang discussion. So, the reason why later niabot ang Spaniards sa Pilipinas, pero although later ako na-discuss further because it was not really their intention nga moanhi sa Pilipinas. They were actually looking for the Moluccas, or also known as the Spice Island, or presently kanang Spice Island, it belongs to the territory under sa what country? Na may idea? Wala. Indonesia, Indonesia. So at first yun katong expedition ni Magellan, the intention was really to go to Moluccas, but not in the Philippines. So balik ta. So even before 15th century, actually established na ginatawag nga kanang Silk Road, So meaning to say, ang Europe and Asia already connected through trading. Okay? Kaya at that time, manggod, grabe ang demand sa mga Oriental products. When you say Oriental products, that also already includes the spices, Aside from spices, there are also other prominent mga Oriental products. We have silk, porcelain, Persian rugs. Familiar man Persian rugs, perfume, tartar, and among others. So kanila sila mga notable na sila nga mga Oriental products before. Even before 15th century. But later in the 15th century, that was the perfect time nga ang spices commanded a great demand at that time sa Europe. Okay? So grabe ang demand at that time sa spices. By the way, atong klaro na, when you say spices, that includes cinnamon, cloves, nutmegs, kaning tawag na spices in general, grabe ang abunda kini siya, makitaan gini siya sa Asia, to be specific in Southeast Asia, and even in Philippines, later pag abot sa mga Spaniards, daghan kay mga documents nga na record nila nga even ang Mindanao or Philippines in general, grabe ang abundant kaayo og spices. So balik ta in the 15th century, because of the demand no kaning spices, and owing to the interest of the Europeans no to enhance the taste of the food. Kaya di ba mo na siya ang sole purpose with the spices no, parang pampalasa. So owing to the interest of the Europeans to enhance the taste of the food and for preservation as well, motong rason nga later on ming develop, ming progress ang trading routes or trading activity at that time. Especially with the introduction of spices, katong pagdala na sa mga spices no, from Asia to Europe, that was the perfect time nga mas ning expand actually ang trading routes, nga dili lang siya inland, but including as well kanang waters, open waters. Okay? And because of this demand also of spices, eventually that later led to exploration and expansion. No, later ato ni discuss further so mga na siyang pinaka-extend ba, no, pinaka-extend bitong effect impact sa search for spices, no, that eventually led to expansion and exploration. So anyway, so muna siya no, existing na gid ang trading long before inland and through waterways. Okay? So with again as mentioned earlier, with the introduction of spices, motong rason nga mas mi-expand no, nanaghan actually ang mga trading routes at that time. Now please take note also that katong trading activity at that time no, to be specific in the early 15th century or even 14th century, please take note that very important kaayo ang role no sa Constantinople. Okay? So I hope nakita na niyo sa atuang sa slides no or sa PowerPoint. So very important kay ang role sa Constantinople or what is today the country Turkey, simply because ang Turkey or Constantinople no at that time, it offers actually kanabang safer trading routes padulong sa Asia mga goods. So they have to pay. Ang bayad sila katong mga merchants coming from Europe nga maatog Asia mo cross sila dira because again it offers safer nga panang good trading route padulong sa Asia. So however, so most of the trading routes moagi gid na siya uguan Constantinople, again what is today Turkey. Now in the middle 15th century no, with the emergence of the Ottoman Empire no, mga Turks, so motong later ilang gi-invade ang Constantinople, and in 1453 ming fall gid ang Constantinople o nakuha gid nilang nakuha nilang Constantinople. So unsa may implication ani? Di ba remember as mentioned earlier that as the trading routes expanded, pero it should be noted nga ang important mga significant trading routes at that time, they have to cross no Constantinople. So with the fall of the Constantinople no, as acquired by or invaded by the Turks, matong eventually ang mga trading routes were hampered, na stop siya. And then eventually the Turks what do you call this one, monopolize no, they monopolize Constantinople, and they only allow few and selected lang nga mga European merchants nga mo cross sa Constantinople no, from Europe, crossing the Constantinople padung sa Asia. So because of that, no, problema gid siya sa mga traders at that time no, kay kuan man nahamper man ang ilang trading activity. So the European monarchs at that time started to conceptualize the idea of looking for mangita sila glain agianan, and this time they have seen the what they call this one, the advantage no of sea, ocean nung as kanabang gamiton nila nga dalan padulong sa Asia. So because of that no, that eventually led to the so-called age of exploration. Okay, so kung balikon ha, so ang naka-trigger ang age of exploration, nag-start to mga navigation, expansion, exploration, simply because na-block ang Constantinople and they need to look for, again, sa gito silang pangitao nila, they need to look for agianan no, to continue the trading activity padulong sa Asia. Now, with the commencement of the age of exploration, it was actually among the European countries, it was actually Portugal who first initiated the navigation, and it was later on followed by Spain. So both Spain and Portugal, no, grabe ang ilang competition, ilang rivalry at that time. No, kanang sa gitawag na exploration. So again, ang ilang ultimate goal is mangitag dalan, no, agianan across the seas, vast ocean, para makaadto sila sa Asia. Now, to cut the long story, no, short, moto ang naglumbaan na grabe ang rivalry or competition is kaning ang Spain o ang Portugal. Now, as you have seen in the map, no, grabe kaayo ang ilang expedition at that time, no, ang ilang exploration at that time para lang gid mangita og dalan. Kaning red, these are mga already existing trading routes before, but again, no, na-stop lagi siya because nagi-control sa Turks, no, ang Constantinople. So the blue ones, no, mo ni siya ang mga exploration kaniadto, facilitated by Spain and Portugal. So taas-taas kini siya nga storya, no. So to make it short, Spain and Portugal eventually able to find ways, no, nakapangita sila dalan yun, no, ilang explore, no, ilang explore paubos, and eventually they reach the Cape of Good Hope, and then minglaho sila and they reach Asia. So ang conclusion ani is that, no, during the commencement of the age of expedition in the 15th century to 16th century, ang conclusion ani is that kita sila dalan. Okay, and the only way at the time ang existing body of knowledge at that time is that the only way for you to go to Asia is kailangan ka mo tuyok og Africa. Okay? Kaya at that time dili pa man gyud kana bang wala kana bang idea nga round ng earth, later pa man na siya, not until human ang expedition ni Magellan and Delcano. So at that time dili pa gyud ingon totally kana bitong proven kung unsa gid ang earth, not until the expedition ni Magellan. So with the exploration, no, facilitated by Portugal and Spain, ito na-discover nila nga ang the only way at the time the only way for you to go to Asia is kailangan ka mutuyok Africa, and then there you have it, no, Asia. Okay? Now, also as you have seen in the map, grabe ang kuan mga rutas exploration at that time. In fact, na-mention ako earlier nga with the commencement of the age of expedition, grabe ang rivalry and competition ni Spain and Portugal. And by the way, these are both Catholic countries. Okay, mga Catholic ni sa mga countries and mga powerful kini sila mga countries before. So with their competition and rivalry, there were times and instances nga kana bitong, like for example, dering area naduan na siya ni Portugal, but later may intervene si Spain, or vice versa, kaning area naduan na siya ni Spain and nang hilabot si Portugal. So tungod ana, because of this rivalry, murabag it resulted to conflict, no, nagka-conflict na si Spain ug si Portugal. And remember, these are both Catholic countries. So at that time, si Pope Alexander VI could not afford to see nga kaning duha ka Catholic countries mag-away gid sila, kay that would be really a big mess at that time kung may tabo gid na siya, kay gubot gid na, again, these are powerful countries. So para dili siya may tabo, no, nga mag-away ang duha, motong gisettle niya ang issue between Spain and Portugal by dividing the world among the two, no, Spain and Portugal. So under the Papal Bull of 1493, no, nagset og demarcation lines si Alexander VI, no. I hope makitaan pagyapon ang mapa, no. So nagset og demarcation line si Alexander VI. So please see, wait for a while siya madrag. Anyway, if you have seen this one, kaning broken line, nakita na ba ninyo? This one, the broken line. So muna siya ang first papal bull, no, nga demarcation line nga giset ni Alexander VI in the year 1493. Demarcation line. So ang distance ani is that 100 leagues west, no, west of Cape Verde and Cape Verde. No, this one. So 100 leagues. So meaning to say, all territories east of the demarcation line, it all belong to Portugal. This one. So that includes Asia. No, in general, Asia, Africa, kana siya, that all belong to Portugal. And west of the demarcation line, I am referring to what is now the continents North and South America. Si Spain ang in charge ana. Okay? Klaro ra ba? Klaro ra ba ang kuan? Ang Papal Bull in 1493, no? So gi-divide ang world para di sila mag-ilog ba. So mean to say, si Portugal ang in charge nga mo explore diri nga area. Si Spain ang in charge nga mo explore, mo invade, mo colonize, okay? Mo gain og territories, og new lands, no, diri nga area. So ingon ana ang kasabutan. However, as months pass by, si Spain still continues to encroach to the territories assigned to Portugal. So because of that, nasako si Portugal, and then he pleaded to the Pope nga, "Oy Pope, si Spain padayon niya pun siya manghilabot sa akong territory." So to settle the issue, and also as a means nga to punish bitaw Spain, motong later gimove nila ang demarcation line. Diba remember katong broken line, kita mo ang broken line, no? Mo man na siya ang first demarcation line. So gipanish siya, in a way gipanish siya ni Pope Alexander VI si Spain, gimove nila ang demarcation line. Instead, di ba at first kay 100 leagues man to west of the Azores and Cape Verde Islands. So as punishment, gi-adjust nila, gihimo lang 360 nga leagues. So gipataas na ang scope ni Portugal. And mo nang rason nakabantay bitaw mo, in America only Portugal ang Spanish speaking nga countries. The rest Spanish ba sila, colonized by Spain. Ang Brazil lang gyud ang Brazil lang gyud ang the only and sole country at the time nga na-under sa Portugal. So mo ni siya ang division sa world at that time. Okay, so now let's introduce and let's proceed to Ferdinand Magellan. So originally by race, si Ferdinand Magellan, by race, Portuguese gina siya. Okay, he has long been serving the Portuguese Empire at that time. In fact, did you know nga kani si Magellan before bitaw the expedition to the Philippines in 1521, he had been to Malaysia and western part of Indonesia already. Nakato na siya actually sa Malacca, he had been to Africa. In fact, si Magellan back then sa Portugal, he was actually a very prominent and reputable gid siya nga personality back then sa Portugal. So how come na later he joined the Spanish voyage or expedition? So this is the story. If you could still remember, di ba katong sa age, the commencement of the age of exploration, di ba ang conclusion man ato based sa ilang discovery and exploration, the only way for you to go at the time na ilang practice ilang tradition, the only way for you to go to Asia is dire jigga, di ba motoyo ang Africa, remember akong gi-discuss ganina, di ba pa-eastward siya, di ba eastward siya, pa-eastward. However, ang proposal mango di Magellan, he was actually very ambitious, and considering also his knowledge when it comes to expedition and navigation, he was too confident nga kana bang mo-succeed gini siya nga iyang proposal. So sa di proposal niya ingon ani nung abot man siya sa Spanish Empire, ingon ani ang proposal mango di Magellan is gusto siya moadtog Moluccas. Okay, remember lahi ang Malacca from Moluccas. Ang Malacca part sa Malaysia, ang Moluccas what is today part sa Indonesia. Ang Moluccas muna siyang Spice Island ha. So manang gusto adtuan ni Magellan. Kaya again ang Moluccas known for kanang island nga rich of gana siya spices. Manang in fact yung term at that time ang yung term at that time is a Spice Island. So ang natabuan is that he wanted to go to Moluccas, however, not following the traditional route nga pa-eastward. So instead ng matuyok siya Africa, then maabot siya Southeast Asia, and then later padulong na din sa Moluccas, ang iyaha is the opposite, meant to say pa-westward siya. Now at that time, again, kaya dili pagid ingon anak ka-advance ang ilahang, o dili pagid totally proven kung unsagid ang Earth at that time. In fact, wala pa nakabuhat ana nga pa-westward. So unknown pa na sa ilaha, meant to say, in fact, bago na discover ang Amerika, di ba? Through the expedition of Christopher Columbus, pero mulagi misnomer man to, gabi niya India. And later pa nga mga expedition na prove na dili dito siya India, but a new world, di ba? Through the expedition of Amerigo Vespucci. Motong later, gipangalan ang katong New World as America, named after Amerigo Vespucci. So ang point is, even kanang America, 15th century pa na-discover or early 16th century pa na-discover. So if you go beyond America, that's one today, that's Pacific Ocean, right? Kana unknown pa na siya, unknown pa na wala pa na sa existing body of knowledge at that time sa mga European people. So mean to say, katong proposal ni Magellan is wala pa nakabuhatan na ang aming adto og Asia by sailing westward. Na in fact, there were kana bang stories kani adto nga kana bang pag mulahos kuno ka diha mahulog ka, ingon na bang thinking, so kani si Magellan, he was too confident nga makaabot gid siya og Moluccas by sailing westward out of iyang knowledge pod sa navigation or maritime nga navigation, So because of that, he was actually rejected by the King of Portugal, purely for the reason nga di ba pa westward man siya. If you could still remember the demarcation line manggod, di ba kani nga teritoryo asa na siya na-assign gani sa Spain ba ya? Kani ba ang teritoryo ang na-assign kay Portugal. So kung i-allow manggod niya ang expedition ni Magellan, that would cross and encroach the territories assigned to Spain. Nasabdan ninyo? Am I clear? Naminaw pa ba ang kuan? mga participants nato, no? For sure, no? So mo po nang rason nga it was rejected by the King of Portugal because it would cross, no, and encroach the territory nga na-assign kay Spain. And also remember, wala pa lagi nakabuhat ana, no? Wala pa nakahimo ana nga miadtog Asia by sailing westward. Okay, so kung ako po ang King of Portugal, why would I allow, no, Magellan nga mo take off og navigation nga uncertain nga wala pa nakabuhat gani ana. And remember, ang navigation baya, no, ang navigation or exploration, that's too expensive because aside from the fact that you will be providing ships, and remember, ships ha plural siya, so daghan gid na siya. In fact, si Magellan gani pero provide sa King of Spain 5 bito ka barko. Aside sa barko, you need to provide also kada bang manpower or men. Kaya dapat naman ikauban ng captain, di ba? And aside from the ships, the men, resources, no? Importantly, essential kina sa expedition, and that's too expensive. And the King of Portugal could not afford to take the risk bitaw nga mugasto-gasto lang siya basta-basta and all. And also at the time ang good pod, kani po si Magellan namo na siya issue before, no, financially ba, no, na siya mga issue. So parang kumbaga gatambak bitaw to siya, plus his proposal pa nga very ambitious mo tong later he went to the King of Spain and it was eventually granted. Okay, grant siya sa King of Spain. Okay, go ahead, no, just explore kay basta hindi makita ning mga dalan padong sa Southeast Asia, or to be specific in Moluccas. That is why on September 2015-19 nag-start na dayon ang expedition ni Magellan. In fact, he was provided by the King of Spain 5 ka ships, diba? Si Trinidad, what are those, no? Trinidad, Victoria, Concepcion, Santiago, and San Antonio, diba? Okay? So from the 5 ships, eventually isa rin ni survive ana nakauli ana. Okay, taas-taas ka na siya nga storya. But in the interest of time, dila ko na i-detalye, pero naalang ko i-outline dire. Okay? So this one. So September 2015-19 nag-start ng expedition. They cross Atlantic Ocean. Okay, and then nihapit sila sa Rio de Janeiro. And then they cross the Strait of Magellan, no? Nahimo siyang shortcut, and eventually, okay, pag abot sa shortcut, tulo na lang nahibilin na nga barko. Okay? Tulo na lang ka ships ang nahitabo ang nahibilin. And then they cross Pacific Ocean. Okay? Now, instead nga sa Moluccas sila moadto, kaya remember, ang purpose at ang primary intention sa expedition ni Magellan, no, was to go to Moluccas, right? However, instead of Moluccas, ang ilang nalandingan, ang ilang naabtan is ang later on known as Las Islas Filipinas. Okay? So nakahapit sila sa Las Islas Filipinas. Again, at that time wala pa mga Pilipinas, no? Kaya ang Pilipinas at that time composed of local settlements sa mga mga barangay, di ba? So dili pa mangud to united or one unified nga country ang Pilipinas before. In fact, nobody knows about Philippines before. Okay? Pero based sa mga Chinese records as early as even sa dili lang sa Chinese na records, so but katong if you could, I don't know kung familiar mo sa Laguna Copper Plate, 'di ba? Sa through the Laguna Copper Plate exist na ang Philippine polity, no? Recognize na ang mga places. Pero again, bulag-bulag la palagi siya, no? Dili pa siya united as one, no? Dili pa gid siya nga kingdom gid ba, no? Mga localized settlement among to at that time, no? Mga barangay. Okay? But anyway, so yeah, motong rason nga nakapit sila og kanang later on known as Pilipinas. So at first, no, on March 16, 1521, they sighted the mountains of Samar, and a day after they proceeded to Humunhon, and then it was in the Humunhon nga ang troops ni Magellan encountered Raha Colombo, no? Si Raha Colombo, and very significant kini siyang pag-abot ni Magellan sa Humunhon simply because with the encounter of Raha Humabon, kasi naabot man do sila, diba? Gi-welcome man siya ni Humabon. In fact, it was at that time, no, ang natabo ang first nga blood compact, no, between Humabon and Colombo, I'm sorry, no? Si Raha Colombo and Magellan. And after Humunhon, no, they proceeded to Limasawa. Okay, and then accordingly, no, it was in Limasawa na natabo ang first mass, no, in March 31, 1521. And then after sa Limasawa, they went to Cebu, no, in April 7, and then there gi-welcome siya ni kuan ni Rahaw Mabon, no, man siya Rahaw Mabon na kasi kulambo man to sa kuan sa Humonhon. So sa Cebu, he was actually welcomed by Rahaw Mabon, nagpa-convert together si iyang wife si Juana, matong gi-gift din niya ang katong kuan Santo Niño, no, kung familiar pa mo sa Santo Niño. And then after that, no, nga na-control na nila ang kaning territory under ni Rahaw Mabon. Eventually on April 27, dira natabo ang conflict between Magellan and Sira Halapu-Lapu, no. Dira natabo ang main commence ang Battle of Mactan on April 27, 1521, and eventually, no, namatay si Magellan, no. He was executed during the Battle of Mactan. Anyway, na mga pictures dire, no. So muna siya, no, illustration lang ni siya, depiction lang ni siya sa first mass kunuhan, no. First mass ang natabo on March 31, 1521 sa Limasawa. And you also have here kani siya, muna siya ang again illustration na po din siya ha ni Magellan and Raha Humabon, and this one illustration, no, sa katong pag-turnover na dayon sa Santo Niño. And then this one, no, we have si Raha Lapu-Lapu, no, and the Battle of Mactan. Okay, so to cut the long story short, no, very long story kaya na siya. Right after the Battle of Mactan, namatay man to si Magellan, and then there were some survivors, no, nga naka-escape sila, and then may hawa sila Cebu. Okay, pero at that time duha na lang ka barko ang nahibilin, no, si Trinidad and Victoria. So may escape sila. And daghan pa kayo sila gipanghapit-hapitan man, no, right after Cebu, balik kita diret. Okay, this one kini nga mapa. So right after leaving Cebu, nakapit pa sa Palawan gani, no, nakapit pa sa Palawan, and many more nga places pa lang naputan. In fact, nakoy ko ang trivia, no, pagkapit na Palawan, no, sa account ni Pigafetta. I don't know kung familiar mong Pigafetta or na-discuss na ba niyo si Pigafetta, pero si Pigafetta, by the way, no, just to introduce, he was actually the chronicler sa expedition ni Magellan. And then ang account ni Pigafetta nga katapitang first voyage bitaw around the world by Ferdinand Magellan, grabe kaayo to siya, important kito siya nga primary source because it contains wealth of information about the Philippines at that time. So pang pre-colonial kito siya, no? I don't know kung familiar mo, sino kasi ka-familiar ani sa account ni Pigafetta, Antonio Pigafetta, no, naman sa readings in Philippine history. No, grabe ang wealth of information na gi-provide ni Antonio Pigafetta about the existing culture, religion, tanan-tanan gid, no, gi-describe gid niya ang society at that time, ang political, religion, tanang aspeto gid, no, sa Pilipinas at that time. Okay, so anyway, so sa account ni Pigafetta, actually na-mention nga paghapit na Palawan, that was a time nga na-notice or na-observe sa mga Spaniards nga existing na di ang sabong sa Palawan, di ba? Oh, nakabutang na sa account ni Pigafetta. But anyway, right after leaving Palawan, nakahapit silang Bulukas. So mean to say, successful yapon siya. Although namatay na si Magellan, kaya ba remember, to begin with, diba? Naitabo pa itong expedition ni Magellan kay ang gusto mo atog Molucas man, diba? So wala gyud pa siya na fail. No, kaya nakahapit sila Molucas, no, nakahapit sila Molucas, and they were able to acquire mga good amount and considerable amount of spices actually. Naka-load gid sila spices, no, sa duha ka barko. However, at that time manggo, there were actually kanabang mga Portuguese patrol ships. Okay, so matong nagsabot si Trinidad ug Victoria, I'm referring to the ships ba, no? Nagsabot sila nga magbulag ta, no? Separate ways ta kay para in order for us to mislead, no, the Portuguese patrol ships. So ang sabot nila si Trinidad, pabalik siya sa ilahang ruta nga giagian, remember? So pabalik siya Pacific Ocean. Okay, mo lang agreement ilang sabot. Well, si Victoria pauli na siya dire. Kaya again, in order for them to mislead the Portuguese ship. So karon nadakpan man nadakpan naman ang barko nga Trinidad, so may survive na lang si Victoria. So eventually, no, ataka si Victoria, and then by 1522 nakauli gid siya, no? Nakaabot sila sa Spain. And that's the reason why dito na nila dito na unravel ang history about sa Southeast Asia, and to be specific about sa Pilipinas through the account of Antonio Pigafetta. Diba? So very successful po do siya nga expedition. Again, we need to acknowledge also and give credit to Sebastian del Cano, no? Kay had it not been for Sebastian del Cano, di ba ito makabalik po ito expedition. So dili lang enough ang Magellan expedition, it should be Magellan del Cano expedition, kasi del Cano man ang nagkumpanggo, di ba? Okay, so that's the end of the Magellan Sebastian Delcano expedition. But what is actually the importance of that expedition? Unsa impact ana later sa Pilipinas? And then if you could still remember, di ba, I made mention that to begin with, katong expedition, ang ilang intention was to go to Moluccas, right? Nakahapit raman to sila sa Pilipinas, no? By accident raman to, no? Wala man gito kuan, wala man gito tuyuang makahapit sa Pilipinas, di ba? So kailang purpose atong Moluccas. So kung ang Moluccas ang lang intention at that time, why after the expedition of Magellan, further expeditions were sent to the Philippines, di ba? Mga question ta, right? Nasabdan ba ang question? Sakto no? Kay kung boto no naon katong expedition ni Magellan, di ba? Tumulukas man ka. Okay? Pero nga naman nga, right after that expedition na nakapit sa Pilipinas, further expeditions were sent not to Moluccas, but in the Philippines. And because of that, that eventually led to the Spanish colonization. May result na siya colonization hinoon. So before that, no, before tumansira na siya, first, ato sang i-discuss na nato ang sabay impact, sabay effect sa expedition ni Magellan Delcano. Please remember also nga, di ba, ganina nag-mention man ko nga, dili pa magid ingon anak establish or kana bitong dili pa gid bitaw totally dili pa gid establish ang kana bitong kung unsa gi figure bitaw sa world at that time, but because of the expedition kay naman guti mga daghang theories, daghang existing theories at that time sa geography nga discipline, no, daghang theories mangod nga in fact atong sa ancient times they were thinking flat disk kuno, di ba, flat disk kuno ang world, ang earth, then napayuban na spheroid, spherical, ana ba daghang kay mga theories at that time. So it was only after the expedition of Magellan and Delcano nga na-prove nga round gid ay ang earth, and then based sa expedition expanded gid siya, no, kanang round gid siya ba, dili siya ana di sa spheroid, spherical, but round gid siya. Okay, so grabe ang impact, ang significance ani sa expedition ni Magellan. And of course, to the expedition of Magellan, dito po na-discover nga napamali mga existing places, ang people dira sa area sa Asia, no, nga kanabang grabe pod ang economic activities, or if not kanabang nagi civilization pod. Okay, so that is the reason why nga later after reading the account of Pigafetta, mura bag nagka-interest dayon, I mean kana account ni Pigafetta, testimonies of the survivors, because of that nagka-interest na dayon ang King of Spain nga to what they call this one, to colonize, no, ilan naging sakupon ang katong adtuan ni Magellan. Okay? So, umutong later, further expeditions were sent to the... Di ba, remember sa account ni Pigafetta, grabe, magiging abundant. For example, the presence of golds, di ba? Pigafetta kept on mentioning golds in his account, plus the resources, and aside from that, the trading activities, di ba, nga, na-mention dito nga, somehow connected gid siya, no? Kumbaga, night ties si Pilipinas and the rest of the Southeast Asian countries at that time, no? And even Moluccas, no? Connected sila through trading. So, much more nga nagka-interest ang King of Spain nga, sige, ato ning ipadayon og ganang colonize. And also, importante pa ang position ni Philippines at that time, because pag once makuha si Pilipinas, that would be their gateway to Asia. Kaya wala pa ba sila teritoryo sa Asia? Diba? Plainly and solely, ang territories ni Spain, again, if we go back to the katong division of the world, sa Amerika ra ba ya? Diba? Sa Amerika ra. So, pag makuha ito lang area, it would be their advantage on their part, no? Nga mas ma-expand lang territory, ma-propagate ang Catholicism, glory, etc., etc. Okay, so that is why the King of Spain sent further expeditions, no, to the Philippines. So right after Magellan, we have Cabot expedition. What else? Not Cabot. Ang pinakauna is Loaiza. No, right after kay Magellan in 1521, we have the Loaiza expedition in 1525. We also have the Cabot expedition in 1526. Aside from that, we also have the Saavedra expedition in 1527. And then we have, by the way, katong first to gi-mention nako, Loaiza and Cabot, this all failed, no? Wala sila kabot sa Pilipinas. Kaya nagsugod na sila Spain. Silang exploration, pero wala sa kabot sa Pilipinas. And sa time ni Saavedra, 1527, nakaabot sila Pilipinas because ang expedition ni Saavedra, wala man siya nag-start sa Spain, but in Mexico. That was the first expedition na nagsugod og Mexico, ha? And then followed by Villalobos in 1542. Okay, si Villalobos nakaabot po na siya og Pilipinas, pero sa case ni Villalobos, muna na siyang time nga ilan ang gilikayan. But okay, just to add ha, if you could still remember katong demarcation, tong divide bit ang world, atong balikan to siya sa PowerPoint ha. Di ba, gidivide man tong world, di ba? At first, kaning broken line. Then later, di ba, muna siya ang division. By the way, nakalimut kong share ganina nga, because of the expedition of Magellan and Elcano, it actually ganabang created confusion at that time. Grabe ang discussion at that time sa Europe because mula gito, how come nakaabot si Magellan no sa Moluccas by sailing westward? Okay? Kaya that time pagtuo manggod sa mga European is ang Asia is naa siya sa ano? Is part gid siya. Is part mao to rason ganay nga ang first na nag-occupy sa Moluccas or what is today Indonesia is ang Portugal baya. Diba? So because of the expedition of Magellan, nanay claim karon, nanay claim ang Spain over Moluccas. Okay, over Moluccas based sa account ebidensya man nila ang mga survivors plus the account of Pigafetta nga they have reached Moluccas. So therefore, by sailing westward, so therefore Moluccas is ours, diba? So part sa among teritoryo. Nasabdan ninyo? So nagka-conflict na. So in order to settle, diba, divide man to, paano man siya pag, diba? All is nga territory or lands under siya ni Portugal. Okay, tinuod nga nasa kaya diba by practice pa isman to. So motong at first ang jurisdiction ang jurisdiction sa Moluccas is under siya ni Portugal. Supposed to be. Okay, but because expedition ni Magellan natuan man nila pero pa westward man, so therefore nanay claim. So motong later na-adjust na pud ang na-adjust na pud ang bahina, ang pagbahina sa kalibutan. So under the Treaty of Saragossa in 1529, na ni siya. So nanay part ang Spain sa Eastern Hemisphere. Okay? Nana siya claim at that time sa Eastern Hemisphere. Pero at that time, ang Pilipinas manggod, wala pa lagi Pilipinas at that time manggod. So motong pagsulti ni Kuan, pagsulti sa King of Spain nga we will colonize this kanang territory nga natuan ni Magellan. Nobody cares about that one. Ang ila ramang focus ang Moluccas, kinsay rightful owner sa Moluccas. Okay? So motong walay ming contest about sa Pilipinas. Again, wala pa mga Pilipinas at that time. Nobody knows about Pilipinas. Ang ilang issue karon dira si Moluccas. So under the Treaty of Saragossa, moto nga ang ilang solution no to reconcile this issue is nagbidding sila, di ba? Nagbidding sila. So it so happened nga ang dako magud amount at that time si Portugal worth of 350 gold ducats, motong eventually nakuha niya si Moluccas. Kumbaga ang idea is gipalit niya ang teritoryo nga tubigin iyaha mangyod. Nasabtan na ninyo? Diba? So ingon ana nga story ba? Okay? So gipalit niya yung teritoryo nga tubigin iyaha magidunta. Okay? Pero again, going back to the Pilipinas, so ang Pilipinas, although kayo mo lang taon karon sa present ka map, supposed to be part unta siya sa jurisdiction or territory ni Portugal. Okay? Pero again, unknown pa magid ang Pilipinas, motong gipasagdan lang po nila. Motong eventually nakalahutay motong min prosper ang mga further expeditions to the Philippines. Daghan kay expeditions iabot sa Pilipinas. Pero sa time ni Villalobos in 1542, motong rason nga ilang gilikayan ang Moluccas. Kaya diba 1529 nagtabo naman ang Treaty of Saragossa. So ang rightful owner naman karon sa Moluccas is sa Portugal. Ito ilang gilikayan. Diretso sila sa Pilipinas. Okay? But anyway, failure mangyapon tong kuano without real success mangyapon tong expedition ni Villalobos. Eventually, we have the last expedition that was actually commanded by Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. Okay, so ang pinaka-last na expedition was sa time ni Legazpi. So si Legazpi, same with Villalobos and Saavedra, they came from Mexico. Okay, they came from Mexico, and by that time, that was actually in 1564, may biyahe siya, and then by 1565, abot siya Pilipinas. Okay, si Legazpi. So niabot siya Pilipinas, and then he was actually very successful, no? Very comparable. Muna siya explanation, by the way ha. Muna explanation, if you could still remember, di ba, your teachers sa elementary and high school kept on saying bitong ang Pilipinas kuno was colonized by Spain for 333 years, right? Familiar mo na? No, ang Pilipinas kuno was colonized by Spain for 333 years. Now, if you do the math, kanus amon ang first encounter sa mga Spaniards kaniadto sa mga Pilipino sa time ni Magellan in 1521. Pero if we do the math manggod, 333 years, no? Minus, kano sa nag-end ang Spanish period? 1898 man, di ba? So what made it 333 years? So kanang 333 years, no? Walay apil ana ang atong expedition ni Magellan o katong mga series of expeditions sent to the Philippines. Kaya ang starting anang 333 years katong panahon nga niabot si Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. Sa ato nang klarohon na. So that made it 333 years. So nag-start ang counting 1565, not in 1521. Nasabdan ra, manang 300, do the math gani, no? 1898 man nag-end ang Spanish period. 1898 minus 1565, you get what? 333 years. O muna siya. Okay? So, mangutana mo, Sir Jay, ganong 1565 man and not in 1521? So, just to clarify. O katong expedition ni Magellan and other expeditions kan abot sa Pilipinas, such as Villalobos, no? These are important expeditions, especially sa time ni Magellan, no? Kay abot sa Pilipinas mangyo, di ba? Kumpara kay Loaiza, Cabot, and Villalobos, no? Failure to sila. Sa time ni Magellan, successful makito siya, no? Kay nakaabot gid siya, and then he was able to kanabang perform itong blood compact, naka-negotiate gid siya. Aside sa negotiation, he was able to extract taxes as well. Diba? Naka-convert pa siya og ang mga natives na convert pa niya into Christian faith, no? However, please remember also nga right after minghawa ang Spaniards sa panahon ni Magellan, na-stop na pud siya nga practice. So meaning to say, unsa bang basis in claiming nga imuha ng teritoryo kung wala imprints? Diba? Unlike sa case manggod ni Legazpi, pag-abot manggod niya by 1565, pag-abot niya Pilipinas, to be specific in Cebu, nakuha man niyang Cebu. Na-colonize man niya, na-invade man niyang Cebu diretso. Diba? Na-negotiate niya si Rahatupas, and then na-convert niya, naka-establish ang settlement dito. He was able to convert the natives into Christian faith, collect tribute, taxes, etc. etc. In fact, Cebu was the first Spanish settlement at that time sa panahon ni Legazpi, and it happened in 1565. See? So nasabtan niyo nga nung 1565, no? Kay very successful man si Legazpi. Unlike sa case ni Magellan nga tinuod na introduce niya ang Christianity, tinuod na he was able to negotiate with the Datu, Raha, no? Tinuod nga na-collect siya kanang tributes in a way, pero panandalian naman to siya kay right after namatay siya and right after ming leave tong ang mga survivors, wala ni balik ramon pud sa old practice ang mga tao. Unlike sa case ni Legazpi nga that was officially the start. Kay in fact right after Cebu in 1565 they went to Panay. Okay, this time ato Panay. Ato silang Panay. Ang Panay is dira niyo makitaan kanang Iloilo, no? Iloilo City. So ang Panay Island, ibabaw ra man gud pud na siya sa no? Sa Cebu. So they went to Panay, and just like the case of Cebu, naka-establish pa og second settlement ang troops ni Legazpi sa Panay no in 1569. So see, naa siya continuity ba? No napadayon nila ang pag-colonize sa Pilipinas. So right after Panay, I mean during their stay sa Panay, they heard stories, no, a lot of stories about kanabang northern nga area accordingly very prosperous, accordingly based on the Spanish accounts, nga mo na siya ang center sa trading routes at that time. Grabe kuno ka-lucrative, ano ba, like busy ka siya nga port, busy ka ayo ang ilang port, ilang activities mo na siya, no, grabe ka abunda ang ilang activities. And I am actually referring to Maynila. So during their stay sa Panay, nagka-interest na dayon si Legazpi nga right after Panay, ilan pong kwaon ang Maynila, no? So motong later may attack sila sa Maynila in 1570. So dira na encounter si Raha Sulaiman, no? For sure naka-encounter naman ang term nga Raha Sulaiman, no? So dito ilang na-encounter si Raha Sulaiman, si Lakandula, si Lakandula, and daghan pa to mga personalities, no? To make it short, in 1571, no? In 1571, just like what happened to Panay and Cebu, nakuha gyapon ni Legazpi ang Maynila. Okay? So see, so pila lang kay years he was very successful, no, in colonizing this important mga settlement and territories, Cebu, Panay, and Maynila. So by June 24, 1571, matong gi-declare na din ang Maynila as the capital of later known as Las Islas Filipinas. Okay? So makitaan gini mo ang contribution ni Legazpi at that time. So anyway, as reward, no, of his kanabang success sa iyang pag-colonize sa area sa Las Islas Filipinas, matong later he was granted by the King of Spain the title as the first governor. So nahimo siyang first governor. And of course, by that time, no, katong pag-acquire na gid bitaw sa pag-capture na bitaw sa Maynila in 1571, that was the perfect time as well nga officially gi-declare na gid, no, gi-acknowledge na gid ang Pilipinas as a crown colony of Spain. So part na ta sa teritoryo, no, part na ta sa colonies ni Spain. That is why when the King of Spain granted the title nga Spanish governor, no, to Miguel Lopez de Legazpi, no, naka-follow pa man siguro ang tanan, no, granted the title Spanish governor to Legazpi. That was also the time na na-establish na dayon ang o ilan na lang gi-erect ang political government in the Philippines. So very important kini siya, dapat sabton gid nato ang political structure at that time simply because kung imo lang taon manggod, the reason why nganong problematic or the reason why nganong underdeveloped ang Pilipinas at that time has something to do with kanabang the flaws sa political structure at that time, ang flaws sa kanabang implementation bitaw sa ilang policies at that time. Okay, kay makitaan manggod dato nga dili ba kaning ming project bitaw ming project nga I don't know kung klaro ba sa inyo or visible ba sa inyong screen, pero makitaan ginato sa chart bitaw nga very highly centralized, no, highly centralized ang political government during Spanish period, contrary to at present, di ba? At present decentralized naman gyud ang atong gobyerno, na meaning to say nanay power ang mayor, nanay power ang governor. So under his jurisdiction makabuhat na siya, maka-initiate na siya balaod, maka-approve na siya tanan, no, ingon ana bala, for example business permit pwede na siya ma-approve by the mayor, like dili na siya kailangan isaka sa taas. Okay, kaya decentralized naman. During Spanish period, muna siyang isa sa problema at that time. Okay? Aside from the fact na layo ang Pilipinas, no? Layo ang Pilipinas layo ang Pilipinas sa Spain. Another problem also, no, that contributed anong underdeveloped ang Pilipinas because of the flaws, no, sa political government pod ba. So para masabsaban, let's explain. So on top of the political structure, you have the King of Spain. Opo, siyang pinakataas simply because colony man ta, no, colony raman ta. So therefore, ang King of Spain possess the executive power, no, very powerful. By the way, let me remind you nga in the 15th to 16th century, no, umani panahon na especially 16th century, natang gitawag sa European history bitaw, natang gitawag nga at the time ang Europe was under the age of absolutism, no, age of absolutism. So I mean to say very powerful kaayo ang king, very absolute yang power, like he can do everything whether just or unjust na buhat niya tanan, di ba? So kana bitang the idea of kana bitang branches of government or separation of powers wala pa na siya before, no? So very absolute kay ang power kaniadto sa king. So man kung makita ninyo, no, ang king he possess executive power, no, paramount leader gina siya. Okay, so siya ang pinakagamhanan not just in Spain but all throughout his territories. Now if you have seen sa kanang sa atong slide excuse me, the slide, right after the King of Spain, you have the Council of Indies. Okay? So for sure, makutana mo, unsa may function ng Council of the Indies? Ang Council of the Indies, ang iyang function is, nahulog siya actually nga lawmaking body. Okay, nahulog siya nga lawmaking body sa mga teritoryo or colonies ni Spain. So mean to say, diri himuon ang mga balaod. Okay, aside from the fact nga ang Council of Indies pa na mag-administer sa mga colonies, siya pa tighimog balaod. In fact, one of the notable nga balaod, no, mga balaod nga nahimo at the time nga eventually na implement bitaw sa mga colonies, kanang gitawag nga laws of Indies, no, in 1680. So under the laws of Indies, diha no makita na policy about taxation, forced labor, among etc. Daghan na siya, no, the laws of Indies. So dira na siya gikan. Okay, kaya ganun, yung function ng God is lawmaking body. And siya pa mo administer sa tanang colonies ni Spain. Kadaghan manggod kay na siya. Diba? Dili lang ba ang Pilipinas but sa what is today the continents of Americas, North and South, Central America, ano sila? Most of the colonies ni Spain naman dira, Venezuela, Mexico, Paraguay, Uruguay, Chile, Bolivia, Ecuador, kana sila ba, no? Under man na siya sa Mexico under man siya sa Spain before. So man ang bugat pug ang trabaho ni Council of Indies. But later, di ba? I don't know kung naabot na pod mo sa discussion bitaw nga the granting of independence, no? in the 19th century mo nang panahon mangod nga most of the colonies ni Spain nga naa sa Amerika, they were already independent, such as the case of Mexico. So halos sa gid sa colonies ni Spain at the time were already independent. In fact, by 19th century ang nahibilin na lang ana is ang nahibilin na lang colonies under ni Spain, we have Pilipinas, Puerto Rico, Cuba, no, kana sila, no, nahibilan lang ang mga teritoryo. So manang rason nga later in the 19th century na change po ni siya, no? Dili na siya under sa Council of Indies ang Pilipinas. Later on ang jurisdiction sa Pilipinas was handed over to the Ministerio de Ultramar or Ministry of Colonies in 1863. Na change na siya, pero same function yapon. Like sila taghimog balaod, sila tag kanang administer sa mga colonies. No, na change na siya. No, hand over lang siya sa Ministerio de Ultramar. No longer the Council of the Indies in the 19th century. Okay, 19th century pa to siya. Okay, so we're done with the King of Spain. Nasabtan na lang function, nasabtan na lang role. Now let's proceed to the Viceroy of New Spain. I am actually referring to Mexico. So for sure you're wondering, ano na may Mexico dira? Diba? Now, I don't know kung this is new to you, but actually, ang Pilipinas starting 1565 up until 1821, did you know nga dili man Spain ang nag-administer sa Pilipinas? I don't know if this is new to you. No, kasi bag-o nakadugan ni. Balik ko na ko ha. Starting sa time ni Legazpi padulong sa 1821, dili man Spain ang nag-administer kay Pilipinas. It was actually Mexico. Asabdan ninyo? Si Mexico man. Munang rason ha nga manang close kaayo ang ties ni Pilipinas ug Mexico before. Like, dili lang siya political but goes beyond political pa, economic, socio, cultural, religion. Grabe ka close ang ties ni Pilipinas o ni Mexico before. But politically speaking, nga nung connected man siya, simply because, di ba, kung atong lang taon manggod, di ba, ang Pilipinas was the only territory, di ba, ang Pilipinas kay, lahi manggod siya. Teritoryo manggod siya nga naa sa Asia. Di ba, as mentioned earlier, most of the territories and colonies ni Spain na sa Amerika. Si Pilipinas diri man good. So kung si Spain pa ang direct manage mo administer ani, layo man gaayo, like either way, no, kung padiri siya moagi or the opposite dire, layo kay si Pilipinas. So because of the proximity or the distance, mo nang rason nga ang task of administering the Philippines was actually given by Spain to Mexico. Nganong Mexico man? Simply because at that time ang Mexico man pud kay mo man siya ang kanang established na gibitaw nga among the colonies ni Spain sa Amerika. Mo na pinaka-establish, mo nang capital at that time man good. So mo tong later, kumbaga ang relationship mo siya pamilya ba? Ang mama si Spain iyang gihatag ang responsibilidad sa mga mabantay sa manghod sa kinamagwangan. Sa kinamagwangan, murag si Mexico, ang kinamanguran, si Pilipinas para mo bantay. Siya mo oversight, siya mo lantaw, siya mo administer. Okay? So munang rason nga most of the governor generals, halos mga pari kani adto ato mga cultures, these are actually coming from Mexico and not from Spain. No? So grabe atong shared culture with Mexico. In fact, daghan kay mga prutas, mga mais for example na introduce sa Pilipinas. What else? Daghan kaayo, no? And then I don't know if familiar mo sa Black Nazarene, no? Kung familiar mo sa Black Nazarene, actually gikan man na siya Mexico. No? Then gigift man na siya, gihatag man na siya sa Pilipinas. Muna niabot na siya, pero nasunog mo to itom na siya. Okay? And then sa economic nga aspect po, galleon trade, di ba? So tungod sa kanabang ties bitaw ni Pilipinas, political ties, motong later may expand pa gid ang relationship nga dili lang siya pang political but even cultural, no, economic, religion. Makit-an gid mo ang relationship ni Pilipinas ug ni Mexico. So balik ko na ko ha, as early as 1565 until 1821 ang nag-administer actually sa Pilipinas not Spain but Mexico. Okay? But after 1820, why 1821 only? Simply because diba na-mention ako ganina nga kanabang by that time manggod nga independent na manggod ang mga colonies ni Spain sa Amerika. Example ana ang Mexico, nang independent naman sila. Sa motong gi-turn over nila, motong gibalik nilang hatag ang Pilipinas to Spain. So it was only in 1821 up until 1898 nga nag-administer sa Pilipinas si Spain na. Si Spain na. Okay? Anyway, sige. So yeah, moto siya no. So sa political structure, we have the Viceroy of Mexico and after that we have the Captain General. So ang Captain General ang mo-appoint ani ang Viceroy of Mexico. Okay? So wala pa election kaniadto sa higher position. These are true appointments. Okay? These are true appointments. Munang rason gani nga uso kay na bitong mga bribery, uso kay ng pagpalit-palit og mga positions kaniadto. Yes, tinuod na siya. No, existing na mga pagpalit og mga position or mga ranggo kaniadto. So, yeah kani sa Captain General. So ang mo-appoint ani ang Viceroy of Mexico. And then we also have the Royal Audiencia. So ang Royal Audiencia acts as the Supreme Court before. Okay? And then we also have the provincial na level. Okay, kay para ko na mas mapadali ang pag-colonize ba mo tong ilahang gi chop bitaw nila ang Pilipinas. So from a bigger nga Pilipinas, okay, divided na the probinsya. And ang probinsya divided into munisipyo or pueblo at the time. Pueblo po divided into barangay. Okay, now again, please remember na kanang mga position, these are true appointments. Okay, and then kanin diri sa Ubos, Gobernador Silio and Cabeza de Barangay, mo yung mga panahon na true election na siya. Okay, and then kanin po yung mga position, these are mga positions to be acquired by katabi tayong mga pamilya sa mga dato or nobility. While kaning sa taas, mga Spanish by blood gid ni sila. Also, nakitaan po nato sa chart nga alongside with the political nga affairs, we also have the ecclesiastical. E diba, remember ang Spanish period ruled or Spanish colonialism ruled by the union of church and state. Okay, so kung may exist, kung naasi political, naapo di si church. In fact, in reality gani mas powerful pa si church kumpara sa mga officials before, di ba? Mas powerful pa siya, grabe ang yang influence kaniadto, like dila siya maka-intervene, maka-encroach sa political nga affairs or maka-intervene sa mga political decision making at the time, but even sa eskwelahan, sa community, di ba? Grabe ang role sa mga kura paroko. Kanang pinakaubos na mga kura paroko, grabe ang ilang role at that time sa community. Okay? So anyway, aside from the political government, let's discuss also some of the colonial policies. So we have here, dire lang tanong sa tributos or sedula. Okay, so ang purpose ani for sedula is for kuan yun, no? Para panggasto sa mga expenses or generally for public services, no? Na ilang mahatag sa community, sa tao. Okay, so they collected taxes. However, in reality, but again, di mo lang taon, kaning mga colonial policies by paper, mga maayo man gud siya. Pero when it was implemented by the officials, di na nag-start ang crippling system of taxation, crippling system of forced labor, no? Kanibang grabe naman ang corruption man gud at the time. Pero by paper, ang intention and purpose as to why these policies were implemented is para unta ma-enhance, ma-develop ang people, ang community, ang Las Islas Filipinas in general. But because again of the abuses of the officials, it led to resistance naman dayon, di ba? So one of the notorious mga colonial policies before, we have the tributos, okay, or tribute. At first, they collected 8 reales, diba? Pagsugod sa Spanish colonization, 8 reales. Roughly, if we convert 8 reales, mundaga na siya 1 peso. For family man to, family based man to pag-collect manggod. Pero mo lagi to, grabe ang abuses sa mga Spaniards. And then in return, wala mo na balik sa community, wala na balik sa tao ang supposed to be ilang ma-receive from the taxes nga ilang gibayad sa gobyerno. There were cases and instances pag na paninglan sila doble-doble. And remember, non-payment of tax meant imprisonment, torture, etc., etc., no? Anyway, so grabe ang issue about taxation. Isa sa pinakarason kaniadto nga daghang kay mga resistance kaniadto. Grabe ang mga grievances sa mga Filipino because of taxation. Motong later, in the 19th century, especially late part of the 19th century, grabe ang reforma na itabo sa Pilipinas, no? Muna siya ang panahon nga kanang grabe ang reforma, ang changes sa mga polisiya sa Spanish period in the Philippines. So example sa na-reforma kaniadto ang tributos. Muna itong gi-implement gipulihan na siya og sedula. Di ba? Kabantay mo itong katotang sa KKK, di ba? Punitin ang sedula because at that time implemented naman ang sedula. So ang difference sa sedula from that of sa taxation sa tributos, tributos, kay family based man to siya nga income. Kani siya graduated full tax naman gud ni siya. Okay? So only kato na trabaho or only those kana ba mga tao nga 18 years old and above lang ang kolektahan og tax. Okay? So man ang sedula, this one. aside from tributos na later changed into sedula in 1884, we also have the pulo e servisyo or forced labor. For sure familiar kay mo ani, di ba? So isa po ni siya sa mga hinaing kaniadto sa mga Filipino because of the kanabang excessive bitaw nga implementation sa kaning nga polisiya. Pero ideally, no, ang reason why the Spanish government implemented this policy is to give kanabang trabaho sa mga Filipino people, no, alongside with their kanabang agriculture and farmlands, to give them kanabang trabaho. Okay? So there's like benefits, grabe lang benefits actually under sa forced labor. But again, when it was implemented, wala na na-follow ang mga supposed to be mga important mga provisions under this kanang colonial policy, no? Kaning forced labor. Grabe ng abuses. Number one, supposed to be dapat unta 40 days in a year lang sila mag-render og service, pero ang uban ni exceed pa, we go beyond 40 days, 40 days din, no? 40 days in a year. Ang uban min go beyond pa. And then one important provisions also under the forced labor is that dapat mag-render sila service. By the way, ang sabot sa pag-render service, may kasi mag-construct like roads, bridges, mag-construct o galleon, no? Katong ship bitaw. So mula mga trabaho. So another important provision but under the forced labor is dapat within their community lang sila mag-render og service. Kaya dapat dili sila mulayo. Kaya kung mulayo man gud sila, mapasagdan ang ilahang farmlands. Okay, but in reality wala na lagyo kay uban pa gani abot og gubat, di ba? So grabe ang abuses aning forced labor. In fact, ang term na forced labor tarnished with blood, di ba? Okay, last na lang jud, no? The galleon trade. Although daghan pa ning polisiya ha, pero kanila akong gi-highlight, the galleon trade. Please remember that sa pre-colonial nga period, no, flourishing yun, like very very extensive kaayong commercial trading activity ni Pilipinas with Southeast Asia, Asia in general. Okay, with with China, with Southeast Asia, Borneo, no, grabe gid ka-expansive ang trading activity at the time sa Pilipinas. Wala pa lang nabot ang Spaniards. Pero ironically, pag start sa Spanish period, they stop all this connection. Okay? And then ilang gi-replace with the galleon trade. Meaning to say, ng Pilipinas trading lang with Mexico. So muna siya natabo ka na ito only with Mexico. Okay? So in reality, no, wala man naka-gain og profit ani, no, wala naka-gain og profit ang Pilipinas because most of the products na ginasend kaniadto sa Pilipinas, these are products coming from China or Oriental in general. Although later there were minimal lang yun, no, nga mga products nga ginasend ang Pilipinas, but majority of that mga Oriental products na nga isend sa Mexico, and vice versa, si Mexico pod mag-send siya product mo nang rason nga we are actually bombarded with Mexican products. Dito na introduce ato ang mga agricultural products nga knowingly wata kabalo day nga sa Mexico man ni originally gikan day, daghan kay na sila, no, daghan kay na introduce ato okay, so moto daghan kay rason plus the corruption and among other things. In fact, did you know nga ang galleon trade gigamit na siya, by the way, di ba ang Pilipinas was under man sa Viceroy of Mexico. Financially dili man stable ang Pilipinas during Spanish period. That's the reason why nga annually we are actually receiving compensation or annual subsidy sa Mexico. No, annually nagarawat gid na as to how much, depende man gud na uban mabot og thousands, uban dili siya magdepende sa need sa request sa Pilipinas didto sa Mexico. And then ang galleon trade ang ilang gigamit para pag-transport sa kwarta. So from Mexico padulong sa Pilipinas. Twice or once a year lang, no, ang biyahe sa barko kaniadto. Okay, but mula gito grabe ang corruption plus kana maguba pagid ang mga barko kaniadto kay dili siya durable. So daghan kay issue nga to the extent on the brink of bankruptcy na, no, ang Pilipinas tungod sa galleon trade. And of course, remember nga in the 19th century ming advanced na pud baya ang kuan, no, ming advanced na pud ang trading kaniadto. Diba? If you could still remember the Industrial Revolution, ano natin, mga steam engine baya. So, kaning galleon trade, obsolete na kay mano-mano pa, manual pa manggid siya. Mo man rason nga dugay kasi mo abot mo nang once or twice a year lang ay lang biyahe. So, motong later, again, since very restrictive gani siya nga policy, monopolistic nga policy na naka-benefit lang ani ang mga Spanish officials at mga negosyante nga Spanish officials. So, motong rason nga plus like malagi to very obsolete kay siya, motong ilang gi-abandon, no, ilang gi-abandon. And then right after, especially pag at that time manggod kay na independent naman ang Mexico, so maputong rason nga ila laging gi-stop ang galleon trade, and that's a good thing good thing na siya simply because the moment na stop ang galleon trade, that was also that time na eventually ang Pilipinas was open to the world, no? To the world trade, and ang grabe na ang progress at that time. Itong paabot sa 19th century, may flourish na dayon ang mga liberal thinking, no, mga ideas and even liberal policies padulong sa Pilipinas. So dira na siya actually nag-start, no, pag open sa Pilipinas to world trade. So good thing is ilang gi-abandon ang galleon trade. Okay? So anyway, yeah, pagsugod sa Spanish period, very problematic. Daghang kaming resist because they force and coerce the Filipino people to adopt their culture, their policy, okay, etc., etc. Motong later, it resulted to resistance, revolution, etc., etc. So kana lang, no, for the foundation of Spanish colonialism. Kaya medyo taas-taas gid siya. So taman lang ko diri, Sir James. Okay lang ba?
Yes, sir. Thank you, kaayo, Professor De Los Santos, for that very comprehensive and informative discussion. Pretty sure that our students really enjoyed the narration of our foundation, no, with regards to the colonization of the Spaniards. Although the colonization of Spaniards created a lot of inferiority complex among Filipino people, but we cannot also discredit the fact that they have a lot of contributions that we have in the present time. So thank you very much, Sir Jay, for that very beautiful and insightful discussions about it. Okay, so for today, we will now call our next speaker, Miss Leia Bungas. Madam Lei, are you ready now to give your discussion on the American colonization?
Yes, am I audible, Sir James?
Yes, you are very loud and clear. So,
Oo
buhi
ba?
pa ba ang tanan? Kung buhi pa ang tanan, i-chat ninyo dira nga pretty perfect si Ma'am Leia.
Mao ba,
Perfection.
James?
Kung buhi pa ba ang ato ang mga, and hello po sa ato mga viewers sa YouTube, na tayo 100 plus viewers sa ato ang live. Comment mo og perfection kung nituo mo nga perfect gid ang panghitabo karon. Okay, without so much further ado, please take the floor, Ma'am Lei.
Okay. Kajitsa. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wait. I can't navigate. Wait, ha. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So I'm very sorry for the kanina issue. Again, I would like to express my gratitude to Sir James for this opportunity to be able to talk with you this afternoon, and also my salutation to my former colleagues, Sir Marlon and Sir Jay, who are with us this afternoon. I was asked by Sir James to share with you just a rundown of what happened during the American colonial period here in the Philippines. So right after the Spanish colonial era here in the Philippines, so we use the term colonial, no, because basically they came here and tried to share their narrative with us. And then the Americans came here. It's because there are several factors why they decided to come here, no? Because in the first place, they were not supposed to be here, so they were late in the world arena, because they after what happened with the American Civil War, they have to resettle back and try to look at ito gaha sila ga-exist currently in where they are going as a nation. However, after that particular event nga nahuman na sila na plaster na nilag ayo ang ilang nasod, they decided that it's time to expand, no? It's time for them to expand, and they managed to enter that because out of all the world powers that they have to encounter. It was Spain who was the very pinaka weak lugar nga enemy, no, na ilang pwede nila nga ilahang kontra, no. So Spain during that time was we were still under Spain, and Spain at that time only has two colonies, Cuba and us. So Cuba and the Philippines, and they first took Cuba. No, the Americans waged war on Cuba, and then the Americans brought the war not in Cuba, but they brought it here in the Philippines. No, so thus started the American colonial period. No, so basically the Americans offered us friendship. No, the Americans offered us friendship first, but then as it turns out, well, after what happened with the last revolution in 1898, Aguinaldo had to go to Singapore. No, so when he went to Singapore, he met with American officials who were offering him friendship. No, gi-offeran siya og good things coming from the American government. Actually, the Americans even said that wala gid mo gi-colonize ang Cuba, who is very near to us. How much more ang Philippines, who is halfway around the world, no, for the Americans. So that is why Aguinaldo believed that the Americans are here to offer their help, to share their knowledge to us. No, so he was actually fooled at that time. So the Americans want, because of this, the Americans at first, some rulers like Antonio Luna, Antonio Luna, they tried to question the presence of the Americans who are already here, but Aguinaldo was still very he was not wala siya gaduda kumbaga sa friendship nga gi-offer ni the Americans. But there was this one time during the Filipino-American War when the Americans wanted Aguinaldo to withdraw his forces around the city of Manila, and the Americans behavior so they meant to stay and be the masters and the successors of the Spaniards, no? So how did the benevolent assimilation, kumbaga, is what the Americans use in making sense of why they are here in the Philippines, no? So ang pangutanang, how benevolent was the assimilation? So President William McKinley, actually, according to him, nagdamgo siya, and then one of ang sulod sa damgo is that America is going to spread its glory throughout the world, no? So one of the key things, ilang justification why they came here in the Philippines is actually the benevolent assimilation, the proclamation. This proclamation announced by President William McKinley, the president of the United States of America at that time, it's basically giving us of what they're planning to do here in the Philippines. So this is dollar, it's money, defense, democracy. They want to spread the democracy promise. Deity. One of the difference of the Spanish and the American colonial period is Spain came here with the God, gold, and glory pananaw, no? So they came here offering, including their religion, but the Americans were not very explicit on using religion as their way of colonizing the Philippines, no? So ilang gipaagi og deity. And another one is direct market, because after the American Civil War, America had a very large surplus of goods, no? And economic-wise, they needed market to boost their economy, because they were on the verge of murag ilang economy, murag nahimo na bitaw siya balloon, and then too much air can cause for the balloon to burst, and they do not want that. because after the Civil War, nagtago man sila, they did not have any export or whatsoever. And now here comes the time that they need to dispose all of these surplus products that they have within the United States. So they are looking for the direct market. And ang ilang nakitaan na nga direct market is those colonies under Spain, because Spain was ani nga time the lesser being, no, mas siya ang mas vulnerable, dali siya kuha sa Americans. So again, these are the 5 Ds that are in the benevolent assimilation, which was used by the Americans in their justification on why they needed to be here in the Philippines. No? So now, how did the war started? No, so the war started because apparently there was this American private by the name of Willie Grayson who shot a Filipino on the streets in Santa Mesa, Manila. No, and then the Filipino soldier responded. A telegram was sent to the captain saying that the Americans had commenced hostilities, and then Aguinaldo ordered for an investigation, but the Americans are already very much willing to drive to the north and retaliate. No, upon the arrival of the American reinforcements up north, this is now the start of the Filipino-American War, which will eventually result in the official colonization of the Americans here in the Philippines. No, so there are two key mga features. There are two important persons that we're going to see here in the American colonial period. So we have first Mabini, who was an advisor of Aguinaldo, but somehow along the way, when Aguinaldo was pressured by the American government, he was removed because there were also a lot of internal mga nasa sulod mismo nga mga revolutionaries who do not want Mabini to be at the decision level of the then president, si Aguinaldo, no? So he was removed from as the Prime Minister and Secretary of Foreign Affairs because Mabini was already questioning the existence of the Americans here, ang mga balaod sa Americans. So he was questioning it, and Aguinaldo was also pressured by those pro-American people who wants to let the Americans stay. No, so because of that, he had to be removed. No, and then we also have the assassination of Luna. Luna was we are all familiar with General Luna, both the movie and the actor nga Luna. No, I mean the general, and his death was actually one of the downfall of the revolutionary when the Americans came here. You know, he was very doubtful of the Americans. He was hostile towards the Americans because he knows that dili maayo ang tuyo sa mga Americans diri, no? But then again, those mga pro nga Americans who wants the Americans to stay with us, to stay here, they of course pressured the Aguinaldo government, which resulted for the assassination of Luna. No? Okay, so the Americans at high, there were a lot of during the war. No, there was the Battle of Pasong Tirad, which we're well aware of, every one of us, and then Aguinaldo had no choice but to retreat to Paanan. It's because he was already pressured by the American forces, because na pagkamatay ni Luna, a lot of the Filipino field commanders were demoralized because Luna managed to create a very good military under the Aguinaldo government. But during his death, upon his death, nawala to siya, demoralize sila, they do not want to continue the fight anymore because they're questioning og para asa pa man nga gira, no? So Aguinaldo conducted a guerrilla warfare against the enemy. That's why he had no choice but to retreat to the up north, no? And then there had been the Battle of Pasong Tirad. So fleeing the Americans, Aguinaldo reached the mountain province. And Del Pilar was to intersect the Americans who were tracking them. Unfortunately, Del Pilar was killed by a bullet that passed through his neck. So eventually in 1901, General Emilio Aguinaldo was captured by the American forces led by General Frederick Funston with the help of the Macabebe scouts in Palana and Isabela. So the capture of Aguinaldo is the start of the American colonial period here in the Philippines. No? So now, when they came here in the Philippines, class, one of the key things na gihimo sa mga sa mga Americans, I mean, is they tried to create, they unified actually the archipelago, because when Spain came here, Spain only managed to enter Luzon and then Visayas and then some parts of Mindanao. They never Spain never even managed to they were not able to penetrate deeply, like for example here in Bukidnon, they were not able to penetrate that. And then where areas where the Spaniards were lacking, the Americans was able to do that, no? So they were able to penetrate Mindanao, which was very formidable for the Spaniards, which became a very it's an important aspect when they entered or penetrate some parts of Mindanao, if not some parts, but even the whole of Mindanao, compared to what the Spaniards had achieved only in the northern part of Mindanao. No? So the first Philippine Commission, also known as the Sherman Commission, headed by Jacob Sherman, which recommended the establishment of the civil government here in the Philippines. So as Sir Jay discussed ganina, Spain had a very centralized type of government. Now for the American, civil ang ilang gusto nga government. So they want a civil government. So this first Philippine Commission headed by Jacob Sherman himself. We have Admiral George Dewey, Elwell Otis, Dean Worcester, and and si Dean Worcester. And then we also have, after the Sherman Commission, this was followed by the Taft Commission, headed by William Howard Taft. And this time, mas formidable na siya compared sa Philippine Commission because they're already now the existence of the executive and legislative functions to put up a civil nga government. No? So the Taft Commission, so basically giawat ni Taft ang the Philippines for the Filipinos, no? A policy under Taft administration which allows the Filipino for self-government by allowing them to participate in a popular democratic form of government. And however, si Taft, he still believes that the Philippines should remain as a colony until the Filipinos prove themselves capable of running their own government. So basically, ang mga tanan nga gihimo sa mga commissions is they are trying to make the Philippines wala gipa-practice bitaw to be later on have an independence. So it's wrapped up in a promise that they are here to teach us the science of democracy. That's part of the benevolent assimilation, no? To teach us the science of democracy, no? So they came here, so naa sila na mga commission. However, we are promised with independence, but that promise of independence lasted for 54 years, no? 54 years of American colonization. So it really took a long time for the Philippines to have an independence as what they promised before, no? Now, there will be a sale of huge tracts of friar lands, which is very prevalent in the Spanish period, to Filipinos on easy installment terms. And then in 1904, US government paid $7.2 million to Vatican in the acquisition of the lands held by the religious order here in the Philippines, no? And then we also have the Cooper Act, which is the first congressional law about the government in the Philippines, provided for the extension of the United States Bill of Rights here in the Philippines. No? And then there are also a lot of pacification measures that the Americans had to do because, again, they did not want the revolutionary to start regaining power again and then mautro na po ang mga revolution. No? So they had a lot of pacification measures. First is the sedition law, which anyone who is assumed or na ay mga who are advocates of separation from the United States, even pag peaceful pa na pamaagi, will be imposed to long imprisonment or death penalty. We have the Brigandage Act, which those members who are classified as guerrilla fighters will be punishable again by death or long imprisonment of not less than 20 years. We have the Reconciliation Act, which katong mga towns nga infested with a lot of bandits are to live in designated military zones so that they can be monitored by the American government. And of course, we have the flag law. It prohibited the display of all flags, banners, symbols, and other paraphernalia to suppress nationalist feelings. So it was only repealed in 1919. So for the longest time, from 1907, from the start of the establishment of the Philippine Commission to until 1919, we were not allowed to display the flag of the Philippines. Okay, you will be punished based on the flag law of 1907. No. Of course, although there are beauty in the colonization period of the Americans, there are also harsh realities we have to consider. First is we have the Balangiga massacre in Samar, ordered by General Jacob Smith to kill all men and women above 10 years of age in retaliation to the attack of the American soldiers by the townsfolk led by General Vicente Lucban on the morning of September 28, 1901. Another is we have the Budaho massacre in Sulu here in Mindanao in 1906. After fierce fighting, the Americans suffered 20 casualties and 70 men wounded, and about 1,000 of the Tausug men, women and children were all killed as a result. And they were not just killed, no, some of them were even buried alive. Gipang lubong, something. So it's very, these were part of the brutalities of the American military campaign, because at first, especially here in Mindanao, they were like having this what we call the non-interference policy. So they're just letting it be. They're just letting Mindanao be. And then when whatever is happening up north, like the revolution of Aguinaldo was done already, so they shifted from the non-interference policy here in Mindanao to direct rule and military rule. And they became more brutal, more harsh. And of course, na mga gamay nga mga, not necessarily gamay, na mga dagko nga mga gipang change si Americans, especially here in Mindanao, those sa ato ang dato nga culture, they question the existence of the carrying of firearms by our dato, the existence of slaves. So they were questioning this. They want to eradicate that, actually. So how did the Filipinos lose the war? Basically, before nag-commission, they lost the war because there was an end of the guerrilla warfare. Miguel Malvar, Macario Sakay, Luciano San Miguel, Simeon Ola are just few of the revolutionaries who are the late surrenderies to the American period. And then once everyone was able to surrender, they managed to do everything that they want to do here in the Philippines. We were exploited to the point of a lot of things. Americans had si America daghan siya gihatag sa ato ang mga nindot. Again, they want to give us self-rule. However, it should be taken of note that America also exploited the Philippines to its content. no? So tanan iyahang gusto nahimo jud na ni America diri. So we were exploited on the guise of self-rule, no? So for example, na mga census nga nangitabo, there was the Jones Law, there was the Tidings McDuffie, which gave us the Commonwealth period in the Philippines. However, kani nga mga miskin even the creation of political parties and the election, these were created towards an assumption that we will be given self-rule, but during that journey towards self-rule, the Americans really exploited the Philippines, having to getting all the necessary mga natural resources that we have, exploiting they're basically changing the way that we do our business here, especially here in Mindanao. No? So if there are a lot of impacts that happen in the north, mas daghan og changes nga gihimo sa Americans dili here in Mindanao, no? Because they are brilliant, but they are demonic na brilliant, no? Medyo maayo sa Americans, sa America, but the Americans are quite hadlok ilang kamaayo, because dili mo mabantayan nga exploited na day ka, because you are again groomed to believe that they are here for them to train us to an eventual self-rule, no? So muna ang promise ni Americans sa to, the road to independence, like the Hair Horse Cutting Act, which was nakuha na to through the Osrox mission, Sir Joe Osmeña and Manuel Rojas. But then the Hair Horse Cutting Act was repealed, and then napulihan siya sa Tidings McDuffie Act, which again gave us the Commonwealth period here in the Philippines. So muna siya nahitabo diri sa Pilipinas during sa American period. Nadugay lang in the 1935 na Commonwealth period, it provided for a 10-year na transitional period of the Philippines from a Commonwealth to an independent nasod, no? So it is planned to end in 1946. However, with the onslaught of the Pacific Wars here during the World War II, there was postponed, no? There were postponement of any plans for Philippine independence. Ayan na siya nistorya hagbalik katong na-surrender na si Japan, and nasettle na ang mga allied forces of what's going to happen after World War II. So supposedly 1946 per na-extend na siya mga additional pang 5 years ay hata naka-independent jud sa Americans. Okay? But are we really independent? So that's a question for everyone. So I guess basically that is what happened with the American period here in the Philippines. Okay. Thank you, Sir James.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Leia, for that very informative, short but very informative discussion on the American colonial period. And now, of course, now let us give our speakers a round of applause virtually. And can you please type in "Thank you very much," "Merry Christmas," or any greetings ato mga speakers, no? Ma'am Lei, thank you kaayo. And I know mag-prepare pa ka for your very beautiful outfit for the Christmas party sa university. I hope makadaog ka sa isa ka sako nga bugas nga pa-raffle sa university.
Sana nga. Sir James, kag dili mi makadugay og dili mi makastay og dugay na ni Sir Glary.
Yes.
We have a university party. So mag-goodbye na lang ko daan sa klase. Thank you kay sa
Yes.
opportunity, Sir James. Thank you.
Thank you for kayo sa
Thank you,
pag-response, Sir Glary and Ma'am Leia. Thank you so much.
Sir J and Sir Marlon, kita-kita lang tapuhan ninyo.
See you very soon. See you.
Sige, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so for this moment, I will be discussing to you the Japanese occupation. So we're done with the pre-colonial period class, and of course, we have also heard from our speaker on the discussion on his discussion on the foundation of the Spanish colonization. And recently, we have also finished hearing the discussion of Ms. Bungas pertaining to the colonial period of the Americans. Now, we have to understand that another colonizers of our country are the Japanese people. But of course, let us understand why is it nga gicolonize mata sa mga Japanese. Now, Japanese was very aware na currently gicolonized ta before by the Americans. And so this Asian-centric idea, gusto nila nga nung taga America man ang ga-colonize sa Philippines o ga-exploit siyang resources, or in fact, nga pwede man nga tabangan nato ang Philippines, no, nga sila, capable sila. But prior to that, class, kining Japan, they isolated themselves from the world. When I say isolated, wala gid sila naghatag og information sa gawas kung naunsa sila until such time they surprised the world. Na grabe man di ilang pag-prepare and pag-strengthen sa ilang military capacity. That is why even American people, they claim that they're invincible. They were very shocked when this Japanese nation conquered them also, and niguba gid sa ilahang kanang unsa, ilahang diskarte. Now, the Japanese invasion, like the Germany invades Poland during World War II in Europe, begins when MacArthur prepares the defense of the Philippines. Well, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941. So kining Pearl Harbor is very vital for the Americans, that when it was attacked by the Japanese, naulawan gyud ang tibuok America, because earlier I claimed na ang mga Americans, they claim to be invincible. Like, walay makapildi sa ila, but here comes, gikalit lang silang atake, and the vital Pearl Harbor of the Americans was the first thing gi-attack yun sa mga Japanese. So this is where now the attention of the entire world nabalhin na sa mga Japanese. Natingala sa kinsa may mga Japanese. Now, look at the map. No, here is Japan in Asia. So part siya sa naa siya medyo ibabaw sa Philippines, no? So mo na siya ang unsa, doon siya sa Korea, and then naadiri ang Philippines, as you can see here. So, just to situate, basin wala ta kabalo sa ang Japan, no? Okay. So now, Japan had limited resources. Now, take note na ang Japan had limited resources because number one, their geography also is not that very abundant, just like the Philippines. Pabito nang gusto nila unta i-take over ang Philippines from America because they have learned na ang Philippines is a very fertile land. And then, pwede siya nga daghan kayo o pwede mabuhat ang Japan nga, kanang point nga, puslan man nga gapa-exploit mo Philippines, pagpa-exploit na lang mo sa kapwa ninyo Asyano, dili ka mga American. So that is why, to begin with, ang mga Hapon, dili biya sila hostile when they reach out the Filipinos. Ang gibuhat sa mga Hapon, gipanguyaban gyud nila ang mga Filipino. Nga dili na mo ipurgos ang amo ang language inyo nga, di mo kinahanglan magnihongo. You could speak your language and then we will respect your culture. Pero kita nga mga Filipinos, because we are already convinced na ang mga Americans gyud ang ato ang superhero, di sila ba nag-solve or nag-save sa ato from 333 years of colonization by the Spaniards. So, nakuha nila ang ato ang heart. So, nagkautang loob kun sa mga Americans, mo na nga hesitanta and reluctanta nga mutuo sa mga Hapon. So, kay di mata mutuo, o sige bot sa Hapon, kay dili man mo makuha sa maayo nga istorya, west, agion mo namo sa dahas. So that was the event nga nagka-leche-leche na ang ato ang mga lolo o lola during the Japanese occupation. Now, Japan invaded China and Manchuria in 1931, but Japan allied themselves with Germany and Italy. So of course, Japan, kung sila lang, di nila kaya. That is why they had allied themselves to two superpowers during that time, no? Germany and Italy. So, after that, morning katong picture, no? How Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Okay, kana siya. Muna siya ka Nako, okay. Kanang Pearl Harbor mo dira tanan ang mga tradings, dira gasulod tanan ang mga economic activities sa America from the different parts of the world. So this is another picture of Japan attacking Pearl Harbor during the World War II. And then Japan attacks the Philippines. No, this is after now nga wala gid nila na panguyaban ang mga Filipino, kita wa ato yung gi-reject ang mga Hapon. Then Manila was declared as an open city. Why it was declared as an open city? In order to avoid na ma-destroy pa ang Manila because it's a capital of the Philippines. So daghan na natingob ang mga establishments, ang mga investments nuhay sa government. So para dili siya ma-destroy sa attack sa mga Japanese invaders, gi-declare siya nga open city. Then MacArthur escapes to Australia para unta mangayo og tabang. So that is why MacArthur during that time promised I shall return, and he did return in the Philippines, and then that was also the time nga ni gi-reclaim nila ang mga Filipinos from the Japanese exploitations. Kay exploitations na ginahitabo during that time kay wala naman gid ginahi mga Hapon. No, pero having the second thought, if ang mga Filipino ilang gi-embrace ang mga Hapon, siguro isa ta sa pinaka-discipline karon nga country because we will be able to adapt the culture of the Japanese people. If you try to observe the culture of the Japanese people, they are rich and they are kanang murag nindot ang ilang kinabuhi because they are disciplined. Now, when I say disciplined, ang best example ana is when they work, and when they play. Filipinos are different because when we work, at the same time we play. So Filipino and American troops retreat to Bataan. So that is why natin yung na wag isuko ang Bataan. Because if misuko ang Bataan, kanang place nga Bataan, that is the manifestation nga totally na pildigid ang mga Americans sa mga Hapon. Okay, so that is why ang last gid nila nga ginaunsa no ginadepensahan pod also is ang Bataan. Okay. So next is retreat to Corregidor. No, the Filipino troops retreat to Bataan Peninsula, and MacArthur and Quezon escapes to Australia. So, of course, no part of their strategy is to ask for help sa America because diri gakahinay na ang ilahang military forces because ang mga Hapon perti na nila upadala og mga military nila nga mga personnel here in the Philippines. But ang kining problema po ning mga Hapon is nag-ilang gitodo ang ilahang mga gitodo nila ilang mga forces diri sa Philippines. Wala kayo sila nagbilin og mo secure og mo depensa sa ilang country. Kaya ang nahitabo mo gid ani ang Philippines nahimo host. Di lang Miss Universe ang atong gina-host diri, no? Nag-host ta og giyera between the Americans and the Japanese. So what happened then is gilipot sila sa Amerika gilipot sa Amerika ang Japan kay tungod wala naman sila mga military kay dadto na weekend po nila wala nila anticipate kay they thought nga all out war diri sa Philippines. So dito mo to nga isa sa reason ngano nang hinay pod ang American force because of the strategy employed by the Americans during the Japanese-American War, by which the Philippines hosted it. Very significant role ang Philippines during that time, you know. Okay, so next is, now, part of our discussion and continuation to the retreat of the Corregidor, Filipino and American troops surrendered on April 9, 1942. So they surrendered, no? Then 10,000 prisoners of war were forced to march to camps at Capas Tarlac. This is what we call the Bataan Death March, wherein thousands of people died. Imagine, pabaklayon kag pila ka kilometro, thousands of kilometers, and then walay pagkaon, walay tubig. So anybody nga mo attempt og hatag sila og pagkaon ng tubig ipa-join sa death march. So that is why ang death march was very kanabitang grabe siya kaunsa kanang traumatic sa mga Filipinos during the Japanese occupation because dira gid nakita unsa kasalbayos ang mga Hapon kung sila ang marapitag malain. So lisod kay no na kay mga kanang shooter nga Japanese and then imong ibasted kay murag ingon ana gid na mahitabo kay murag og they cannot defeat they cannot accept defeat or kanang bitang rejection. So mo murag nahitabo sa Philippines during that time. So this is an example of defense of corridor. So the entire troops of the Americans and the Philippines fighting against the Japanese troops during the time, they did their best to defend the entire corridor. So muna na lang last chance na ma-prove nila nga wala pa unta sila napildi. But unfortunately, they were able to surrender gihapon at the end of the day. Now, another picture of the Americans, ito ay bihirang mga litrato ng mga Amerikano during sa giyera ng mga Hapon at colonization ng mga Hapon sa Philippines. So, look at the Americans, no? Tanawa ang ilang barracks dira. Mga Filipino na sila, and Americans also. This is the Bataan Death March. Tanawa unsa ka mga, pero grabe no, picture gyapon sila. So ingon ana sila ka unsa, ingon ana sila ka optimistic during the time. So look at the picture now. This is also the I think this still in the corregidor. Look at that, mga ruins. Okay. Now, on the Japanese occupation, the remaining Filipino and American soldiers resisted. So they still resisted. Kini mga Filipino gid pod no nga gi-reject nila ang mga Japanese. Still galaban-laban kita sa mga Americans kay although kato nag-iingon ni Miss Bongga sa ganina nga murag karinyo brutal kay ning mga Americans no kay manipulative kay sila kay dili na to mahalata nga nagamit na ta pero actually nagamit gamit ilang kabuutan. No? So the corridor falls on May 6, 1942. So even if gibuhat tanan ang pagdepensa sa corridor, but still na pildi gyud gihapon sila by the Japanese. So the Japanese military occupation begins in 1940, officially in 1940. So the Kalibapi was established, also known as the Kapisanan, sa paglilingkod sa bagong Pilipinas. It was Jose P. Laurel was elected as president. The funny trivia, ngalong si Jose P. Laurel ang gitawag po niya puppet president during the Japanese period because he knew how to speak Nihongo. So, dako kay factor na sa mga Hapon, no? Kabalo ka mo speak silang language because para sa ilaha, you valued their culture and then you love their culture. Kay, of course, no, you will never learn the intricacy of the language Nihongo if dili mo siya tagaag pagtagad and dili mo siya love. So therefore, the Philippine National Assembly represented provinces. So they have created a puppet government. Anong puppet government na siya kay? Fasad lang siya ng gobyerno, but at the end of the day, still, ang mga Japanese gapon ang ga-create sa mga policies and ga-create sa mga mandate. Ang kwarta during the Japanese period was a Mickey Mouse money. So wala siya value. Ingon ana ang pananaw sa mga Japanese ato. Okay, mura bitaw taon sabi, di gid mo magpatuo sa mo sa mga Americans mo bulok jud mo mga Filipino. Murag deserve ra ninyo. Ngana na ang thought no mo na gidaog-daog ta nila murag gi pang amungan nila mga babae sa una. Diyos ko, dagan kitag mga comfort women nga nang rape during the time and until now buhi pa ning mga uban nato nga mga comfort women na sa Davao no. Recently I have seen claiming ilang grupo nga ga-claim sila og kanang reparation and war damages against Japanese government kay tungod sa ilahang damages nga na ilahang na experience during the war nga gihimo sila comfort women. Kasi pasabot sa comfort women. Kini mga Japanese mga they love doing kanang bitong mga sexual intercourses, mo ilang stress reliever. So mo na role sa mga babae. No? So luoy kay mga babae sa una. I do not know if luoy ba or mas worse pa sa luoy. No? Kay grabe ang ilahang trauma during that time. Now, when MacArthur, di ba kay MacArthur promised na return siya. And when he returned, so he landed. MacArthur landed in Leyte on October 29, 1944. So sa Leyte siya nag-return. Now after 10 months of fighting the Japanese, driven out in 1945. So from 1942 to 1945, roughly 3 years lang tagi-colonize sa mga Japanese colonizers. So mubo ra kay siya because in 1945 also that was the end of the World War II. So that was the start of the rehabilitation of the damages brought by the World War II during that time. And because of the end of the World War II, part of it is Manila was devastated because of the bitter fighting. Grabe kaguba. And if you want to look at kung sa kaguba ang Manila during that time, Here are some sneak peeks. So here, these are the cause or effect of the liberation or freedom that we ask from the Japanese, no, through the help of the Americans. So Americans lost 60,628 men. Grabe kadaghan nga mga lalaki, no? 60,628 ka mga sayang ba? Char lang. So meanwhile, the Japanese lost 300,000 men. Imagine, unsa kadaghan ang nangamatay. Then Filipino lost 1 million men. Grabe. Kita noon na host, kita naman ang pinakadagang patay. Na 1 million men and women man ang nangamatay. So the Commonwealth, because nabawi na ta sa America during the time 1945, the Commonwealth was restored with Sergio Osmeña as the president. Okay. So mao nang hitabo sa una sa mga giyera, daghan tig nangamatay. So gamay ra kayo og kanang casualty ang mga Americans, 60,000 men lang, 300 ang sa Japan, 1,000 and 1 million sa mga Filipinos. So kita mga Filipinos, so there's something wrong sa ato. Pinahilig na itong laban-laban. Imbis wa tayo labot, madamay-damay, kita na noon ang nagrabihan. Okay. So here, mo ni siya nahitabo, no, tanawa unsa kaguba ang mga buildings sa Manila during after World War II. Look at that. Diba? Type giba kung nasubukan yun ng masira sa pagtipid. Type in, kung buhi pa mo, type giba kung nasubukan yung masira dahil sa pagtipid. I cannot see anyone nga typing, so dapat makakita jud ko, wow, giba by Antoinette Tuba. Napa sa Idoki, nagiba gid sila. Correct. So kinsa pa dira ang magpretend? Ang magpretend ngayong Pasko ay mamalasin ng todo. Char lang. Okay. So mo ni siya ang ato ang mga na-experience during the Japanese occupation. So look at that, the Metropolitan Theater of Manila. Grabe atong investment ana during that time sa American and Spanish period, but look at after 40 years giguba gid sa mga Hapon. Grabe ni mga Hapon makaguba og ugma. Look at also the videos. No, look at also the videos here, or the photo rather. Unsa kaguba ang building. Lisod na ka na itukod. Mura lang ka og nagbakang-bakang nga tawan, mura kag building nga maglisod na og tindog. So another one, so tanawa urag haunted house ang mga building during that time. Now the Filipino resistance movement, no, there are 260,000 Filipinos who joined the guerrilla movement or kanang gitawag na Hukbalahap, hukbo ng bayan laban sa Hapon. It was established and this hooks turned against the Americans. So mo ni silang murag lidiran sa mga NPA, rebelde in the present time. So sila na ang mga murag nagsugod yun. Nga supposedly ang Hukbalahap na create siya aron against sa mga Japanese. Pero pagkawala sa mga Japanese, kini mga Hukbalahap ni against na pud sa mga Americans. Now, on the promise of independence, on July 4, 1946, the Philippines was granted independence. Take note na gipattern ni siya sa Independence Day of the Americans. So that is why July 4th of America, that was a celebration of their independence. But in the Philippines, July 4 is considered as the Filipino-American Friendship Day. Okay. Kaya ang atong gituhuan ng good nga Independence Day is June 12 nga Declaration 1898 ni Onsa Emilio Aguinaldo. Pero in reality, ang atong independence until today wala pa nato makuha. Ko ako and many of the nationalists, because we are still slaves of Americanization and Western civilization's influences. Seldom lang ang Philippines makadecide on its own, and then kana lagi no wala kayo tay kanang independence when it comes to foreign policy and all, but dako na kayo siyang istorya honon. Pero sa ato nga level, sa inyong nga level, enough for you to know the trivia that on July 4, 1946, American declared Philippines as an independent, total independent country. Even if we were declared independent already, the Philippines was still, no, klaro kay nga under pagapunta sa mga Americans because ang Belt Trade Act was still passed, and then the US still has access to Philippine resources through the parity rights. Kanang parity rights nga ang mga Americans na sila karapatan mo exploit mo utilize o mo explore sa atong resources, equal og karapatan. Imagine that kung ang mga Filipino Americans equal ra og right when it comes to kanang resources nato. Grabe ang exploitation. Nag-continue gyapon ang exploitation sa mga Americans during that time. And then much more ang US bases, no? Naagyapon diri sa Philippines, and you know, nag-base sila to guard us na dili ta embrace sa communism, kay duol kay ta sa China and all. That was a anti-communist movement by the Americans para strategic ang Philippines para ma-monitor po nila ang Thailand, ang other neighboring countries. Okay. So, I think that's all about for Japanese, very short, and I hope namoy na learn something there. So kung namoy na learn, ibutang ninyo dira nga nasudlan na. Meaning nasudlan na ang atong una-una og mga information and knowledge. Ang dili mo type og nasudlan na, masudlan gina karong bagong tuig. Go! Nasudlan na. Perfect. Ngano ni mga haha? Ang i-type dapat nasudlan na. Nasudlan na og knowledge. Kana kung nasa YouTube, no, i-prove sa mo nga buhi paghihapon mo, pag-type mo sa comment section og nasudlan na. It means kadaghan nag-speak, no? I hope na anay nasulod nga mga knowledge. Okay. So without so much further ado, allow me to introduce our next, last but not the least speaker, who will be speaking on the legacies and achievements of the various presidents from the First Republic up to the present time. He's a graduate of AB History at Mindanao State University, General Santos City, and a graduate of Master in History at Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Technology. A former colleague of mine and a good friend of mine, we have Professor Marlon Lopez. A round of applause, please. Sir?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Sir James. It's quite a while, no? Since the last time we did not meet each other for a very long time until today. Anyways, I was not expecting audible. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oo, so ayun, I was invited by Professor Violon here while we were drinking alcohol. Anyways, let me I am not a fan, don't worry. I'm not a fan of very long discussions kasi ako mismo naboboard din ako eh. Nakikinig ako dun sa I mean if I am listening to a very long lecture, I myself I get bored easily anyway. So I will be starting my presentation, or my presentation is all about contemporary Philippine history. We will be surveying Philippine history through the various contemporary the various contemporary Philippine presidents. So the previous speakers have discussed, or the previous research persons have discussed from the pre-colonial down to the Japanese era. So give me the time, okay, indulge me the time to discuss with you contemporary Philippine history through, of course, surveying Philippine presidents. By the way, I am a high school teacher. Okay, I'm teaching in Philippine Science High School, Surgeon Region Campus. Of course, mas toned down po akong magsalita compared doon sa nasudla na and anything. Anyways, first and foremost, we have here Manuel Acuña Rojas. Actually, he's if I were to describe the regime or the years of the leadership of Manuel Acuña Rojas, it was actually reparation or reconstruction of the Philippine economy and at the same time the country itself. So doon po tayo pumasok sa iba't ibang agreement agreement doon sa mga Amerikano upang may stabilize mas stabilize natin yung ating ekonomiya and at the same time ang ating bansa. Pumasok po tayo sa tinatawag nating Belt Trade Act. Yung Belt Trade Act is yung palitan ng produkto between the Philippines, Malaya, okay, the free trade malayang pagpapalitan ng produkto sa pagitan ng Amerika, ng Estados Unidos at ng Pilipinas. Ang problema lang po dito, hindi po ang kapasidad ng Pilipinas bilang isang bansa, since tayo ngayon nag-host ng World War II, naging napilay ang ating industriya. That is why we cannot actually compete equally with the Americans, since they have a stabilized economy, they have a strong economy at the same time. So they were the only country, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they were the only country na pumasok doon sa digmaan ng World War II, sa ikalawang digmaang pandaigdig, na wala masyadong damage. Okay, yung mainland America mismo. So walang pantay na kakayahan ng Pilipinas at ng Amerika na pumasok sa isang kasunduan ng malayang pangangalakal. That is why nung pumasok tayo dun sa tinatawag nating Belt Trade Act, nalugi. Instead of, meron naman tayong kumita tayo doon sa pakikipagpalitan natin ng produkto. However, we were more exploited rather than we actually made money out of the Belt Trade Act. So pumasok yung malalaking kumpanya dito sa Pilipinas. Most of the big industries were just facade. I mean, most of the Filipinos who were incorporators of various American companies and industries who entered in the Philippines by virtue of Belt Trade Act were just facade of American incorporators, American big businessmen or big American businessmen na na gusto lang naman magkapera dito sa Pilipinas, and at the same time exploit the resources that we have here in the Philippines. Needless to say, ang Belt Trade Act po ay naging parang Pandora's box ng Pilipinas, kung saan na-exploit yung ating ekonomiya and at the same time na-exploit din ang ating natural resources. Since we have to remove restrictions on foreign-owned companies, especially American companies, na pumasok sa bansa at i-exploit ang ating natural resources. Number two, one of the provisions of the Philippine independence that was granted in 1946 was for the Americans to establish their military bases. Under the hair hose cutting law, we demanded, or what do you call this? The Americans demanded for a military base to be established here in the Philippines for us to be granted independence. However, Quezon said or told the American representatives that it is unacceptable for the Philippine legislative body to grant the Americans military base. That is why in the Tidings-McDuffie law, which gave us independence in July 4, 1946, ang na-establish doon ay ang Subic Bay, a naval base, and an air base in Clark. So yun yung naging bargaining chip, o yun yung naging bargain ng mga Amerikano para bigyan tayo ng kalayaan. And at the same time, under the military bases agreement, it would last for at least 100 years and it is renewable. 100 years, pero naging na-amend ito into 50 years. Okay? Pumasok naman yung pamumuno ni Elpidio Rivera Quirino, kung saan pumasok din po tayo sa tinatawag nating Mutual Defense Treaty. Yung Mutual Defense Treaty meaning an attack to one is an attack to the both parties. Pumasok tayo sa Mutual Defense Treaty sapagkat ito po ay isa sa mga this was the time that the Cold War was in its height. Okay, na high time po yung Cold War. Kung hindi po tayo medyo familiar doon sa Cold War, this was the showdown of the two superpowers after World War II, namely the Soviet Union or the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, which is now Russian Federation, and the United States. So nagkaroon ng showdown sa pagitan ng komunismo at ng kapitalismo, ng authoritarian government at ng democratic government. So parang ganun yung dichotomy doon. So we aligned ourselves by entering the Mutual Defense Treaty. We aligned our country to the Americans. Okay? So pag inatake tayo ng mga kalaban nating bansa or inatake tayo ng kalabang bansa ng Amerika, treaty bound yung Amerika upang protektahan tayo or lumaban in behalf of the Philippines. At the same time, of course, vis-a-vis, parehas din yung kaso. Kung ang Amerika ang kung ang Amerika ang inatake ng isang bansa or ng kalaban nila, we are treaty bound to defend also the Americans. This is why in the Korean War in the 1950s, pumasok or nag-intervene yung Pilipinas doon sa Korean War when the Americans tawag nito, they invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty when the Koreans or the American bases in the Korean Peninsula was threatened by an external forces sent by the North Koreans, the communist North Koreans of Kim Il-sung. Okay, isa din sa programa ni Elpidio Rivera Quirino is yung social amelioration kasi nga rampant yung poverty. There is a wide gap or there was a wide gap actually hanggang ngayon, di ba? So there is a wide gap between the rich and the poor. So ang social amelioration lang, it was actually a program of Elpidio Quirino kung saan binibigyan ng pantay na kakayahan ang mga mahihirap na makapaghanap ng trabaho. They will be granted financial help by the government. So para siyang precedence doon sa tinatawag nating 4Ps. Okay, yung social amelioration program ni Elpidio Quirino. And also, Quirino actually offered amnesty to the Hukbalahap. Kasi yung Hukbalahap after ng pagkaka-defeat ng mga Hapon dito sa bansa, and then the Japanese surrendered in 1946 in 1945 or 1946 nagkaroon ng kasi nga may puwersa yung mga Hukbalahap and they have the sympathies of the poor. Okay, they have the may tawag nito, may suporta galing sa kanila. That is why they became rebel forces. Okay, they became rebel forces and binigyan sila ng pagkakataon ni Elpidio Quirino na bumalik sa gobyerno. And this is why he actually enticed the Hukbalahap to return, okay, to offer amnesty to them and become part of the civilized world. Okay, so yun yung pamumuno ni Elpidio Quirino. Next is yung kay Ramon Magsaysay or Ramon del Fierro Magsaysay. We actually entered into SEATO or the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. This is the same with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So para siyang military pact. It's not parang, it's military pact among the Southeast Asian countries who aligned themselves to the Americans. Okay? So para siyang NATO na may kasunduan ang mga bansa na nasa ilalim ng treaty organization na ito na depensahan ang isa't isa if ever there are threats or attack from hostile countries. Pumasok din tayo doon sa Laurel-Langley Agreement kung saan pinahaba pa natin yung duration ng free trade between the Americans and the Philippines. Okay, what is very notorious of the Laurel-Langley Agreement was that hindi nga pantay yung kakayahan until this time from the government, the administration of Manuel Rojas down to Magsaysay, hindi pa ganun ka-significant yung naging advancement ng industries natin, ng mga corporations natin, mga kumpanya natin. Particularly doon sa mga produkto, doon sa mga produkto na gusto nating iluwas doon sa Amerika. So ang nangyayari is imbalance of trade. Nagkaroon ng imbalance of trade sa pagitan kasi ang dami nating ini-import from the Americans, ang konti nung in-export natin. Pag nangyayari ito, there is a trade imbalance between the Philippines and the Americans. Kaya nga nagkaroon din tayo ng colonial mentality Kasi we view bumaha yung mga bumaha yung mga American goods. That is why we have a taste for American goods. Sikat dito sa atin yung Nike, yung Adidas, okay? It's pronounced daw Adidas. Anyway, it's very awkward. But then again, yung mga American brands nito. By the way, Adidas and Nike are not American brands, but they are advertised as American brands in the Philippines because we have the taste, okay? We have a thirst for American goods because of course of the start and the prolongation of the free trade between the Philippines and the United States. Next, we have here Carlos Polistico Garcia. when the Americans, or when we entered, okay, when we entered the free trade, when we entered Belt Trade Act, and then the prolongation of it through the Laura-Langley Agreement, pumasok si Carlos Garcia, which of course nagkaroon ng Filipino First policy. Carlos Garcia was seen as somebody who is anti-American. Okay, he wanted the culture, the products, the social aspect of the Philippines to be promoted. Kasi nga nakikita, I mean, it was very evident at that time that the Filipinos have really Americanized, nag-Americanize tayo. So the Carlos Pulistico Garcia actually advanced, okay, or promoted the Filipino culture, especially the culture of the Filipinos, kasi nga nakakalimutan na natin yung sarili nating kultura. Okay, so ang nangyayari, nagiging Americanized tayo. We were even called brown Americans kasi we speak English, we know so much of the American culture, we fantasize, okay, we became fanatics of American culture. That is why balikan natin, yun yung punto, yun yung adhikain, yun yung advocacy nung first or the Filipino First policy. Balikan natin yung kulturang Pilipino. And this was the time no na binigyan talaga ng emphasis, binigyan ng support, financial support ng gobyerno ang mga domestic products natin. Kaya nga pumasok yung Marikina shoes during this time kasi nagkaroon talaga ng funding to really boost Filipino products, to really compete with American products kasi nga nasa ilalim tayo ng free trade. So ang nangyari is pumasok, kailangan natin kailangan magkaroon ng puwersa. Okay, binigyan ng support ng ng Garcia administration yung mga produkto or mga industries na nagpo-produce ng mga Filipino products. We became also a founding member of the ASEAN. Until now, we are still a member of the ASEAN or the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations. Okay, so until now, we are still a member. Andun lang, no? Pero very questionable itong ASEAN kasi until now, wala pa din code of conduct doon sa West Philippine Sea. Anyway, before we become political, Anyway, so ito naman, si Diosdado Pangan Macapagal, the father of, the father of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. So inilipat ni Diosdado Macapagal yung nasabi kanina, we celebrate June 12 as our Philippine Independence Day. However, before the ascension of Macapagal in the presidency, we celebrate the independence in July 4. Now, ano yung naging rason kung bakit inilipat? Ano yung rason bakit nilipat ni Diosdado Macapagal yung independence natin? It was actually because of he wanted the support of Aguinaldo, who was, a personality, a famous personality at that time. And once the Independence Day is celebrated in June 12, 1898, when Aguinaldo was really the protagonist of the show, okay, magkakaroon ng legitimacy. Since kasi that time, since history kasi, I cannot really read among Filipino history books, ang pinagagagawa ni Aguinaldo nung panahon kung kailan nakikipaglaban tayo sa ating bansa o para sa kalayaan ng ating bansa. So it was, Aguinaldo was a very questionable personality. But when Macapagal asked for the support of Aguinaldo, he was revered as a hero. Okay, nung nilipat yung independence, kasi nga protagonist at that moment in Kawit, Cavite, when the independence was declared, okay, naging main actor si Aguinaldo. So nagkaroon siya ng legitimacy again. Nagkaroon siya ng fan base kumbaga. Okay, nagkaroon siya ng parang fame. Okay, nung nilipat ang date of independence. It was actually all political. No, nothing historical there. But probably there is historical there, but shall I say I would say 80% of the reason why we transferred, okay? We transferred from July 4 to June 12. It was actually political. Okay, next is the decontrol policy. Tinanggal ni Macapagal yung control ng gobyerno doon sa kasi nga Macapagal was really a fan of Smith, okay, Adam Smith. So parang walang control yung gobyerno doon sa takbo ng ekonomiya. So the decontrol policy was actually to promote various industries to compete with each other, and with competition, mas mag-better yung products, mas gaganda yung serbisyo, okay? Kasi nga wala na magko-compete na eh. Okay, so at least in surveying the effect of the decontrol policy, it went well, di ba? The decontrol policy was really a good thing. Nagkaroon ng competition sa pagitan among the big companies in the Philippines. And we become member of Mafilindo, or the Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia na parang triad. Okay? It's like ASEAN, okay? Pero mas closer yung cooperation natin. But then again, the Mafilindo was actually superseded, I think. Superseded by the ASEAN. Now, after Diosdado Pangan Macapagal, it was Ferdinand Edralin Marcos. By the way, just a little bit of history. When the height of the Cold War, during the time in the Philippines, okay, nung tumakbo si Ferdinand Marcos, he was actually supported by the US State Department. Okay, naglabas ng pera ang Amerika, ang US State Department. At the CIA, The CIA supported Marcos. And Diosdado Macapagal was supported by the US State Department and the Catholic Church. However, as history unfolded, Marcos won. Okay, he built massive infrastructures. Okay, nagkaroon ng industrialization. Hindi may kakaila na grabe yung progress sa panahon ng Marcos administration. Unfortunately, at the end of the martial law, the economy was in shambles. From $968 million debt ng Pilipinas nung pumasok si Marcos noong 1965, nung umalis siya ng 1986, umabot po tayo sa billions of dollars ang naging utang ng Pilipinas. And at the same time, there are a lot of cases that were heard in various courts which allegedly Marcos got amassed ill-gotten wealth, meaning kinurakot niya yung kaba ng bayan. So also there are issues of human rights violations. So medyo murky. Okay, nagkaroon ng bahid ng violence and corruption yung administrasyon ng Marcos, the Marcos administration. Next, we have here Corazon Cuangco Aquino. It was actually restoration of the democratic government. I would not say it's restoration of democracy since Marcos actually was elected in a free and impartial election. Ayun lang, may pumasok na alien, di ba? I mean, may pumasok na mga banyaga. But it was actually a restoration of the government from the authoritarian rule of the martial law. Bumalik yung sigla ng demokrasya. Also, the Aquino I administration was focused on the recovery of the Marcos ill-gotten wealth. Those assets that were declared by various courts that were plundered by the Marcos administration. Also, Corazon Aquino being the first woman in Southeast Asia to become a president, a woman leader of Southeast Asia nation. It broke the glass ceiling. Okay, parang bago ito. That is why it was really difficult for others to para lunukin ito. So nagkaroon ng series of coup d'etat. Yung pinaka-prominent na coup d'etat during the time of Corazon Aquino was led by Gringo Honasan. Sa Pilipinas, pag gusto mo maging senador, okay, mag-stage ka ng coup d'etat. Okay, kung para maging senador ka, we have Antonio Trillanes. Anyway, we will be discussing si Antonio Trillanes pagdating doon kay Gloria Arroyo. So, a series of coup d'etat na survive ni Aquino yung mga coup d'etat na ito. Also, upon the ascension of Fidel Valdez Ramos. By the way, a bit of trivia. Ramos is our first and only Protestant president. He's a member, I think, of the UCCP. So yung vision ni Fidel Ramos for the Philippines is a very industrialized Philippines. It was called the Philippines 2000. Kailangan magkaroon ng Pilipinas ng massive industrialization. Magkaroon tayo ng ganitong infrastructures. Kailangan modernized na tayo. Unfortunately, our power, the generation of power in the Philippines was not yet ready for that industrialization. That is why nagkaroon tayo ng power crisis. Inopen yung energy, nagkaroon ng decontrol na naman doon sa binuksan natin yung ating power generation capacity doon sa mga private companies. Kaya nga nagkaroon tayo ng mga cooperatives. Okay, nagkaroon tayo ng privately owned power plants kasi nagkaroon tayo ng power crisis. At mas lumala pa ito nung pumasok ang 1995 Asian financial crisis. Bumagsak yung value ng peso. Nagsimula lang naman ito doon sa speculation sa Thailand baht or the Thai baht, lumala and then naapektuhan halos lahat ng mga Asian countries. At yun, pumasok ang Estrada administration. It was actually yung pinakamalaki lang naman na balita sa panahon ni Estrada was actually his all-out war against the Abu Sayyaf. There was already a talk, a peace talk between the Philippine government and the Moro secessionist movements. However, because of this all-out war, nagkaroon na naman ng napakaraming nagsimula na naman yung violence dito sa Mindanao. And hindi na tapos ni Estrada yung kanyang administration kasi nag-resign siya. Nag-resign po siya. In 2001, if I'm not mistaken, 2001 or 2003. Pumasok yung kanyang vice presidente bilang pangalawang pangulong babae ng Pilipinas. Pangalawang pangulo na babae sa Pilipinas. It was actually characterized as strong economy. Malakas yung ekonomiya ng bansa sa panahon ni Arroyo. We were even dubbed as the fastest growing economy during the time of Arroyo. We were able to survive the global financial crisis brought about by the downfall of Lehman Brothers and Merrill Lynch, two of the oldest and strongest American banks in the United States. Nagkaroon ng ripple effect ito. Kinaya ng Pilipinas. Most of the Asian countries have a negative output or negative economic numbers, but the Philippines positive pa din tayo and actually mas lumakas pa yung ekonomiya ng bansa. However, one of the issue na ipinukol kay Gloria Arroyo was actually pangdadaya sa eleksyon and against of course Fernando Po. So yun yung also yung NBN ZTE deal, plunder cases against Gloria Arroyo. However, of course, ma-impluwensya si Arroyo ma-impluwensya si Madam Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. That is why until now she's really a prominent political figure in Philippine politics. After Arroyo, we have Aquino II. Nagkaroon tayo ng BARM sa ilalim ni Aquino II or Benigno ni Pinoy. Nagkaroon tayo ng BARM or the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao. Nagkaroon tayo ng success sa kaso natin versus China in The Hague. Binigay sa atin ang karapatan, binigay sa atin ang ownership ng West Philippine Sea. And of course, may isang issue ang administrasyon ni Aquino nung pumasok ang bagyong Yolanda. This was actually the strongest typhoon ever recorded in human history. May maraming donations pero hindi daw umabot sa mga dapat nakatanggap ng donation na ito. And lastly, we have here the administration of Duterte. Of course, malaki na kayo, okay? May isip na kayo, alam na ninyo kung ano nangyari nung panahon ni Duterte. Drug war, nanalo tayo sa West Philippine Sea, yung kaso natin sa West Philippine Sea. However, there was a pivot. Okay, wag nating, ang sabi ni Duterte, ang foreign policy niya, wag natin puwersahin yung China kung ayaw niyang kilalanin. Kung ayaw niyang kilalanin yung arbitration ruling ng The Hague. Pues, magkaroon tayo ng we work out, okay? We work out as parang nagkaroon tayo ng bilateral, okay, agreement, unofficial, okay, kasi pronouncement lang naman ito. Pivot to China. Instead of asking the Americans to defend us in case of China-Philippine War, makipagkaibigan tayo doon sa China at sabay nating linangin yung West Philippine Sea. Unfortunately, China has already posted military barracks and military military airports in the West Philippine Sea. So medyo questionable yung naging actions ng China during the time of the Duterte administration. So I hope I gave light to a very broad topic that was given to me. However, at least we have a survey of what happened from Acuña Rojas down to Rodrigo Duterte. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Sir James. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much for that very comprehensive. I know that it's really broad topic, no, pero still you gave a justice to the discussion. We learned a lot from your discussion, and of course, in behalf of my class, we are very grateful to your time and wisdom shared to everyone. So, a round of applause to Professor Marlon Lopez class. And if nagustuhan ninyo ang discussion ni Sir, sabihin niyo dyan, type in, pogi si Sir. Tapos na tayo sa napasukan ng kaalaman. Ngayon naman ay pogi si Sir. Okay. So, marami ng mga comment dyan. So, yes, so I'm very grateful to everyone for your time, especially sa mga speakers natin who shared their time and knowledge with us. We were graced by many historians in our country, promising young historians. And you are very lucky, no? Among all students, I think in the country, you are the only students who are able to listen to the various ideas and lectures of different historians in Mindanao. No, but the competence are really amazing and no, in line talaga sa academic excellence. So we will no longer hold this meeting longer. So thank you very much, class, for your time. And then I already posted your deliverables sa Google Classroom natin. Just comply it before the year ends so that I could give you your grades already. Thank you very much, Sir Marlon. And guys, thank you so much. So if you want to rewatch the discussion from the very beginning, you could visit wiserpinoytv.com. That's a free YouTube channel wherein posted ang live session natin na ito. Thank you very much and God bless us.